Hello,
Go.
everyone, and thank you for coming to yet another installment in our weekly humanist speaker series from the Humanist Association of San Diego. Today, we have a very special guest, or two very special guests, and today is a day to talk about advocacy and to talk about memory. Today is going to be a painful lesson, but a necessary lesson. Today is a day to understand and to grow, to learn about the past and how we can work together to have a better future. A few months ago, we had a shared talk between the San Diego Humanistic Judaism community and the Humanist Association. And in that talk, I said, we are humanists and we are here to help. And that's the question that I want to ask today after the talk. I want to ask how we can help. A couple of weeks ago, when I brought up this talk today, someone who attended one of our meetings said, why should we care about the dead? They're dead. Why should we care about the dead? It's an important question. It may come off as insensitive, but it's an important question. It's been said that in some cultures, it's said that you die twice. You die when you take your last breath, and the second time that you die is when the last person speaks your name. We have seen horrors committed upon this continent, and these horrors continue to this day. Absolute horrors, brutalization, condemning people to second-class citizenship. And we remember the past for those who've been silenced. And we remember the past so we can fight against what's happening at this moment. So today, we're going to try to reconcile a brutal past and a brutal present. Why? Because we're the beneficiaries of bloodshed. And it's the least that we can do to hear about what's happened and then to take the next step. And for some people, there might be confusion. Things are moving fast. They're moving fast to catch up to where they should have been. We're hearing talks about changing the name of sports teams that people might cherish and resist. They don't understand why. We're hearing talks of reparations. People might feel that they're being exploited, but they need to understand why. And we're having a dramatic social change in this country. And the way to advance and to grow is to learn from the past and learn from other people and make new connections and grow and become better in the process. We can't make up for the past, but we can make a better future together. And this is a disturbing history. It's a disturbing history of arrogance and ambivalence. At the beginning of his book, The Second Treatise of Government, a book that inspired the Revolutionary War in the United States, which words were lifted nearly word for the Declaration of Independence, John Locke opens the book with, in the beginning, all was America. It was an idea of a vast expanse of open resources to be exploited. An idea that there are people there, but they're not using them as well as our people could. So therefore, we have the right to them over those who are not using the environment to its greatest degree. That was the British perspective. The Catholic perspective was quite similar. The Catholic perspective in the doctrine of discovery in the works of Francisco de Vitoria said that the Bible is called for Christians to go forth and to proselytize and to convert. And if people stood against that conversion, the Christians were permitted to commit all acts of warfare to stop that. Additionally, the Catholic theological argument was that the people who already lived across the sea were not capable of governing as well as the Catholics. So therefore, the Catholics had the right to take over and subjugate the continent. Great horrors ensued, from disease wiping out tens and tens of millions of people, to the brutalization of the conquistadors, and the missionaries. Charles C. Mann writes about this extensively in 1491 and 1493. And today we're going to hear about the missions in California, the subjugation, enslavement, brutalization, and murder of countless individuals. And these terrors weren't just limited to the mission system. There was a license given from the United States government to wipe out entire sectors of people. Brutalizations like Wounded Knee. And Wounded Knee is not just a thing relegated to history. We can also see people standing up for their land where they had a treaty that's still active, that was never abrogated. And yet what happened when the government found it inconvenient to have protesters at Standing Rock? 300 people were dispersed by the National Guard. So when I'm saying that things have happened in the past, they've continued to this day. An arrogance and an ambivalence. An arrogance and an ambivalence. And then we see the image of the native people of this land being portrayed in our media. And you might remember back to 1971 with an anti-litter campaign, with the face of a proud Native American with a tear rolling down his face. Well, his name was Aspera de Corti. He was an Italian American. There's this brutal history that we need to know because it's largely been masked. The Catholic Church, repressive religious organizations have done quite a number on a great number of people, whether the native people of this land or African Americans or LGBT people. And yet the church is still somehow upheld and celebrated. There's a lot that we need to talk about today. And most importantly, we need to remember the victims of these atrocities. We need to unite with all groups who have been brutalized and marginalized in the name of religion. And through this, we can learn and we can grow. And it's going to be a lot of growing pains, but this is a necessary process and we're all going to be better for it. And like I said, at the end of this talk, I'm going to ask that question based upon the talk a few weeks ago. We're humanists. We're here to help. And how can we help? And I would like to turn this over to Oso Mwiwe, our social justice coordinator, to introduce our speaker.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Hopefully everyone's doing well. I'm Oso, LGBTQ organizer for our current events. And as Jason mentioned, I will go ahead and introduce our guest speakers today. So today, tribal citizen of the Fernandeño Band of Mission Indians, or Tataviam Nation, Caroline Ward and her son, Kagen Holland, recounts their walk with sisters in 2015. A 780-mile pilgrimage they embarked together to honor the ancestors at all 21 missions in California. During the era of the mission system, thousands of indigenous peoples brutally perished to the point of near extinction. Rapes, murders, revolts, and forced labor occurred at many missions. Belying the sterilized and romanticized image portrayed at missions for purposes of religious legacy, tourism, and revisionist history. Proponents of the missions portray them as altruistic educational or vocational centers, whereas indigenous tribal members offer a darker image of missions as the first system of mass incarceration. Caroline reminds us that 90% of indigenous peoples who entered the mission system died within it, stripped of their lands, their cultural identities, and indigenous life ways. Recently, coming on the heels of the police killing of George Floyd on May 25th and the global groundswell of the Black Lives Matter movement, various controversial statues of Junipero Serra have been removed or toppled through direct action. From an Indigenous and humanist perspective, Indigenous people suffered immensely within the mission system, and the time has come to re-envision the possibility of transforming centers into cultural education centers in order that the truth of their existence and what occurred within their walls can be told. And I'd like to give a warm welcome to our guest speakers, Caroline Ward and her son, Kagen Holland. Welcome.
Thank you. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that the Humanist Association of San Diego is based in the ancestral lands of the Kumeyaay Nation. And Kagen and I are coming to you live today from Tataviam country. We are tribal citizens with the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. And our homeland is northern Los Angeles County. And before we get started, Kagen is going to give you a brief on mission history, so you'll understand why we felt the need to walk 780 miles. So go ahead.
First of all, hi, Kagen Holland. As our introduction stated, I am a citizen of the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians here in San Fernando Valley, so named for the mission where my ancestors were enslaved. I want to give a brief history, a little bit of background on the mission system, at least here in California, and the Catholic Spanish expansion into what we now call California in America. So in the early 1500s, the Spanish Empire had already moved through much of South America, up through now what we call Mexico, and they were making their way into what they referred to as Alta California. That name, California, actually comes from a myth in Spanish literature. It was an island, and it was a quasi like an allegory for the Middle East, and it's supposed to be an island rich with gold and resources, basically one of the foundations for the Fountain of Youth story, which was a big influence in the mythos that led so many explorers, so many conquistadors to come to the New World. So when we talk about revisionist history, I think it's important to talk about the myths kind of that shape the worldview of the people that were coming over here. They grew up with these stories of conquest and of, plundering riches from foreign lands, and deeply ingrained within their culture. And these type of myths and things like this fuel like this pre-capitalist expansion of many of the European monarchies. We see like these ploys for, claiming new lands in different areas from the British Empire, from the Spanish, from the French, from Portuguese, from every European nation that comes out of these traditions. So the Spanish specifically, when they started to move up into Alta California, they were looking specifically for gold. They knew there was gold in South America and in Mexico, and they were looking for more of it. And they were looking for more land to settle, to basically claim a foothold, the same thing that the Americans would later, or were trying to do along in the same era. So they wanted to expand their empire into all the way from Mexico up into Alaska, and they almost succeeded. So in the early 1500s, they began to settle in places like San Diego and places like Carmel, what is now like San Francisco Bay area. And one of the things they would do, not only were these soldiers moving in and looking to, take over new lands, but they wanted to convert the indigenous populations into Catholicism. And this was partly because of their, wanting to just plain expand, but it's also a way for them to kind of justify their expansion in itself. So they send the soldiers along with the priests, and the priests would essentially, and the clergymen would essentially try to convert native populations, and the idea was to assimilate them into their new Spanish colony. And these missions were largely what we now refer to as concentration camps, re-education camps, essentially. That's what they would be labeled if these things really popped up today. So that's a little bit about the mission system and where it comes from. I don't know if you want to add to that before we get into our walk specifically.
Well, the purpose, in 2015, when the Pope announced that he had finished the beatification process for Una Sarah and that they were going to canonize him here in our homelands, I heard it on the radio, and I felt like somebody kicked me in the stomach, because how could they do that? How could they make someone what they claim to be a saint when he was at the forefront of slavery and genocide for the indigenous people in this country, in our homelands? So when I heard that, I was mortified, but I quickly went to Facebook and to other social media to find out what indigenous people in the state were doing, and I found that there were protests going on, and that they were asserting rejection on every level to this canonization. So I remember thinking it was not my saint, but the fact of the matter was that I felt that they had just kicked our ancestors again. So I talked to Kagen, and I attended a symposium in Santa Barbara, and I saw a few speakers, and the time I left there, I knew that I was going to be walking from at least our tribal homelands, or our ancestral village at Castaic Junction, Chayanga, to the mission San Fernando, or mission 17, and to honor our ancestors. And we would walk the most likely way that we felt that they would have had walked. And but when I left that symposium, I knew that I came home and I talked to Kagen and my son Matthew, and I said, we need to walk for all the ancestors, because this is not just about us. So within 4 days, we were out of the house. And Chuck Sanchez, our friend, and supported us financially to get out to the Bay Area. I posted a GoFundMe on a page that I found on Facebook. It was No Saint page. And quickly I received 2 calls from Cat Wilder and from Greg Sealine Cotton, and both were offering help. And I wasn't even sure what they were going to help with, but we met up with them, and the organization of the walk is owed to Cat Wilder, Greg Sealine Cotton, Malia, and Chuck Sanchez. We walked, but they organized where we were going to be, what we were going to eat, who we were going to meet, who we're going to talk to, and so that is definitely how we got to San Diego. So the first day we started off in Solano, at Mission Solano in Sonoma, and I wasn't sure what to expect, and neither was Kagen. And there was people there. We didn't know what they thought, what they were expecting, or what have you. But that mission in particular is coastal Miwok territory, and at that mission, in a 15-year period, over 900 people had died, men, women, and children. And there was a plaque out front, and it had the names, the baptismal names of some of these people. And Kagen and Jeffrey and another person read off the names. And as we read off those names, it occurred to me that we had acknowledged their existence, and that we were able to let go of that. And we met up with a kid there. His name was Winterfox Frank, and he came to me. I was sitting out front and not sure what to expect, and he said, "Are you Caroline?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Thank you." And I realized then too that it was a good decision to walk for all the ancestors, and because everybody was feeling that same pain. And the first day we walked 8 miles, and it was harsh. But the second mission we got to was San Rafael. You want to talk about that one?
So San Rafael, this was a later mission. There's two basic, what we call founders of the mission system. They were in charge of the organization on the West Coast. First was Unibero Serra, who was being canonized at the time that we walked, which was a big part of the reason why we wanted to walk. And then the second is Father Lawson. And Father Lawson was the founder of the San Rafael mission. So it was a little bit later on in the mission system. This was after they had kind of fell into the groove, so to speak, of enslaving and rounding up native peoples from the surrounding areas of their missions, bringing them into work. So San Rafael, to me, it seemed like one of the most efficient, I hate to use
It was a hospital.
a word like that. Yeah, it was a hospital at a point for all of the sick and dying Indigenous people from the other missions. So if your slave population at one mission began to die off of disease, you would basically send those to San Rafael. And San Rafael, there was an inscription on the bell tower when we arrived there. And it said, it was an excerpt from a letter from Father Lawson to the Pope at the time, I forget his name. But it was saying that we have two harvests.
This is the 150 Indians. We have 150 Indians baptized and another 150 waiting for instruction at this. And we walked in, and we walked in there at night. So when Kagen read that, the first thing we saw was a bell tower. And bell tower is just, it's hard to even understand the domination of that bell tower. But so that Kagen read us that, and then the next morning we returned and we went to the rectory and go ahead. Oh, we asked the woman in the rectory if she could point us to the ancestor burials, and she pointed to the top of the parking lot, and she said they're up there at the top of the parking lot. Well, they were under the parking lot, and with no regard for their existence. There was no marker, there was nothing. And I'm sure that the school there had covered the whole grave site. If indeed there was one, it was, you can imagine it was a hospital, there was mass burials at that location, and they were underneath the parking lot. So we made our way to Mission Dolores in San Francisco in like a day and a half, because we were with Sergio and he walked like 3 miles an hour. So we, when we got to Mission Dolores, go ahead. Oh, we got to Mission Dolores, and we walked in, and we were greeted at the front desk, and they let us go in the back where they had a memorial for the people, and there was a plains dress Indian woman in the garden area, ceramic, and it said, "This is dedicated to our faithful Indians." Our faithful Indians. Keyword there, our. And what they meant by that was the neophytes, the ones that had been baptized. And once you were baptized, you couldn't leave these missions. That was their law. You couldn't leave. And it would either get baptized or die, was a sense of how that system worked. So the ancestors would, of course, be baptized. They didn't want to die. And but they never gave up who they were. They never conformed to Catholicism. They used their own life ways to, when they practiced what they thought they were doing, Catholic rituals or prayers, they would use their own spiritual ideals to get through. So there at Mission Dolores, there was a curator there. His name is Andy Galvin, and he is Indigenous with the Ohlone people, and he was the president of the canonization. So with that said, when we went on to Mission San Jose and Fremont. We rode our bike for 30 miles that day, and we walked 7. But when we got there, we were greeted by Andy Galvin and a priest and 2 nuns, and they were waiting out front for us. And Andy came to us. He was, Kagen, Caroline, it's so happy to meet you, and it threw us back a little bit. But what he was trying to do was put a buffer in between us and what our truth was, as far as that mission in particular and what happened there on the mission steps to an ancestor. And the priest himself looked very nervous, but he invited us in, and Karina Gould was there. Karina is the community leader or representative for the Ohlone people. And so we agreed we'd go in the church, and we talked to the priest, and he tried to ask us, what would make things better and so forth. And of course I said, we want our land back, but what we really wanted him to do, and Steve Nakano was there, he said, we want you to rescind the doctrine. And he looked, just, his face was blank, and he didn't know how to express himself. And I asked him, if you are who you say you are, how can you think that this canonization is correct? And he said that he needed to go by what the Pope had wanted to do. So Fufui Lupi was there, and she is Tongan from the Hawaiian Islands, and she belted out a chant that made the roof shake. And the priest himself looked like he was shuddering. It was just an amazing, her voice and just the tone and the whole atmosphere of that was just overwhelming for me. Kagen had met the 500-mile runners the couple days before. So after we left Mission San Jose, we went to stay at a Jedi Knight training center for the night.
That's right.
For the night. And then we set out for Mission Santa Clara, where we reached our 100-mile mark. You want to talk about Santa Clara? Go ahead.
Santa Clara was really interesting. We were introduced, and we were talking a little bit about how the systems of the past relate to the systems of today. Santa Clara is a really great example because there is, in fact, a private college now there on the original mission grounds. The original mission is no longer standing there, but there's a giant university in its place. Almost exactly the square footage of the university is almost exactly the square footage of what the mission held in its property. It's Catholic University. So Santa Clara University, that was, for me, a big wake-up call to see that these things are really still happening today. The system that the missions and the Catholic Church created here, really, it never went away. Although the missions did eventually collapse, the original missionaries were forced to go home, the systems have remained here, right? These systems of basically, Christian education, of, assimilation into Christian worldviews and capitalist worldviews, not only here in the United States, but still going on in South America in a really big way, where the indigenous populations are far more of the population of their own nations. And we see now today, like in Bolivia, their government is under, a coup where basically Christians are reclaiming the nation for Christ, in their own words, you know what I mean? So these things, Santa Clara was really like set in stone for me, like, oh, this is still happening today. We were there to honor our ancestors from the past, but I think there at Santa Clara is when I came to the realization that the way we do that is by, advocating against these same kind of atrocities, these same systems propagating themselves today. So that's what I got from there.
Mm-hmm. So we made our way down south, and we were on our way to Mission Santa Cruz. And when we got to Santa Cruz, the same scenario of where are the burials? Well, they're underneath the parking lot. And the woman actually said to us, well, you don't have to worry about them being moved because we're going to keep our parking lot. And this is where the realization was to me that they're all the same, but different. And they have no cares, no remorse, no regard for the ancestors whatsoever. And so we got, we had a gathering there, a very large gathering there. And when we got back that evening, I sat there and I thought to myself, that woman did not care. She did not care about anything other than trying to protect the church. And that's the way it went all the way down the coast. The church will never say anything that will make them look bad. They will never admit anything other than we were the first people. There's a 17 protocol agreement that the Los Angeles Archdiocese has brought into play with 5 of the Southern California tribes, where they're in agreement that that we were the first people, and that we could light sage in church and so forth, but there's no mention of any wrongdoings as far as I'm concerned with that agreement. So these Southern California tribes that signed that agreement, basically I feel that they are silently consenting to what went on there. And that's what I feel about that. And I so much as said so to our tribal leader, and I was very upset about that, but that I don't get why we would be in agreement with any organization that has a questionable history of crimes against humanity. So we went, after Santa Cruz, we went to Mission Carmel for the canonization day. And on that day, there were film crews and news cameras, and we were told that we had to stay on one side of the church, where the burials of the ancestors were, and why everybody else was on this side. I guess they didn't want us to cause a problem. That's not why we were there. We were there to honor our ancestors. But in the graveyard itself, we were there in a circle, and we could hear them cheering, and they had a big widescreen TV. But we had Laughing Coyote in the circle, and he was talking about what Christianity has done to to Indigenous people, and what they continue to do today to our homelands and to our Mother Earth. So after the canonization, there was a priest who came out and some guests that were there at the canonization itself, and they so much as told us that we're not here because we think he should be a saint. We're here because this is a part of history, in hopes probably that they would rescind the canonization, I would imagine, because they knew that he was not saint worthy or whatever that the Pope had in mind. But one thing that I'll say is that for the Pope to come to our homelands and canonize this criminal was shameful. Shame on them, and shame on the United States. And I'll say it again, for allowing the Pope to come here and canonize this person in our homeland, knowing the atrocities, knowing the crimes that went on to our people. I mean, we're talking about rape and murder and forced religion and forced, slavery. And so much so that if you weren't working hard enough, they would throw your babies in the ocean. This is how they would make you work harder. Your children, 10, 11 years old, have broken backs hunched over from carrying wood. In one instance, there was an ancestor who tried to escape from Mission 17 in San Fernando, and he was brought back, and he was tied to a fence post in the hot sun and wrapped in fresh calf skin until he suffocated. And then he was left there all day for the people to see. So if you leave, this is what's going to happen to you. And this is a Father Lawson mission, just as the one Kagen had spoke about before. Father Lawson mission, Lawson wrote to the King of Spain, and he said that the natives' love for liberty is at the heart of the mission problem. This alone speaks for the fact that they did not want to be there. The ancestors did not want to be there. They went through the motions of being Catholic for survival tactics. I mean, they had to survive. We are responsible for the next 7 generations, and the ancestors knew that. And all through these missions, there are signs. There's medicine that the ancestors left for us. Paintings, wall paintings. There's one in Mission 17 in San Fernando where there's 2 deer above a door, and these deer, clearly one's a male and one's a female, both have arrows in their chest. And this is above the Padres' quarters. Well, that tells you that they're saying they're killing our spirit. Beware. And the rest of the drawings that they had drawn were, the Padres thought, oh, these are beautiful forest pictures or whatever. These were medicines. This were plant medicine that they were holding for us so we would know. Everything the ancestors did was a lesson. Everything the ancestors did was to teach us or tell us what was going on. And I believe that every single one of these missions, there are signs of the ancestors telling us what happened there. In mission San Juan Capistrano, the jewel of the missions, they call it. It's a fairy theme park. But the big church at that mission took 9 years to build, 9 years. But in the walls of that church were pieces of shells and glass and rocks, and it was beautiful. And then that was there for us, for when that mission decayed and started eroding, that we would see that we would know that they were there. And the tribal leader or spiritual person there was Adelia Sandoval, and she told us, look at this. I mean, it was very handcrafted. It was beautiful. It was medicine. And I've been back to each one of these missions at least once. And that's what I look for, is for something for the ancestors to let us know that they were there. And at that mission, when we got there, it was 2 days after of the anniversary that the ancestors had taken the bell from that location. And when we got to San Gabriel, it was 2 days after Toy Perina's revolt. She led her revolt. So everything was in synchronicity with us walking that we didn't really have any idea of at the time. But mission, this go down to La Prisma.
La Prisma. Yeah. So La Prisma mission in Lompoc, California. Where there was mention of the missions being the first mass incarceration in the country, and Lompoc is now where we house many of our most violent criminals in prison. But Lompoc, there at the site of the original mission was in town, so that one's not there anymore. But the state has recreated a lot of the mission grounds as a state park, and this one was really interesting because as a state park, it's kind of dedicated to the physical history of the missions. So they try to recreate it as accurately as possible, which is a little bit different from the rest of the missions that they tried to kind of gussy up for tourism. So this one still has iron doors with locks, and the docents there carry around a large ring of jailer's keys, just like the Padres would have back then. So when we saw that ring of keys, it just sunk in my chest. My heart sunk, and I was just thinking, that is just a clear present sign of oppression. You're walking around and the Padre has the keys to your freedom, right? Just like they hold the keys to heaven in their own worldview. So this is, the entire existence of the missions, almost everything in them was just designed to just beat people down mentally, and to get them to just accept, and assimilate. And it was really scary.
It was very dark. But there was a point where we were walking in front of the gift shop, and you could see where the bricks had been laid, and there was rocks that had been laid in the adobe, and there was a footprint. Remember that? A footprint. So I put my foot in there, and my foot fit in that footprint, and it was just it was a moment of clarity that that these are our people. That particular mission is built near Vandenberg Air Force Base, and Vandenberg Air Force Base is Point Conception, and to the Chumash people, it is where they believe that we exit when we leave Earth, and it must have something. The ancestors knew that it had some kind of gravity pull because they launched from there, and that morning that we were at camp, they launched. So that was, I could hear the ground rumbling, and it was just it just all fell into sequence with the walk itself, and it was very spiritual, yeah. But we went to Mission Soledad. I'm going to talk about Mission Soledad. Mission Soledad is Mission 13, and it is in Soledad in Salinas Valley, and home of the Salinan people, the Eslan, the Cholon, and the Chichenyo Ohlone have people there. But this mission in particular was one of the only missions that didn't have a school adjacent to it, and it was very dark and dreary. But we were walking in there a couple of blocks before, and we were walking with two of the brown berets, Manny and Michael Joseph, and the trees just started to shake or move, and it was just a very moving experience, because it was almost like you could hear singing or voices or something of that nature. But when we got there, we were with the boys and Malia, and we quickly noticed that there was remnants of remains everywhere. You could not take a step without seeing bones on the ground. Now, when we brought this up to the docents at the museum, they said that they were cow bones and that they had native monitors on site, but that the mission itself had been sold off at one point after secularization, and they plowed through the ancestor burials, we understood, to build a farm field. And in the gift shop there at that mission, there was a jar that said, "Please do not collect the bones." And it had bone fragments and pieces of pottery in this jar. So we called the tribal chairperson, Luis Miranda Ramirez, and let her know what was going on. And we asked people not to come in that day to the mission, because we wanted to call out a state archaeologist to review, or just to see if they were human bones and what could be done about it. And just most recently, I sent a letter to Louise asking her what has become of that, because tribal protocol is we don't go into other tribes' business. So we're hoping that that has been resolved, and that our ancestors have been covered, or something has been done with that matter. But I went back 6 months later, and there was a sign up that now read, "At the Native Americans' request, please do not collect the bones." So once they read our write-up about that mission is when they changed their minds quickly. And what difference does it make, you know, at the Native Americans' request? At any request, please don't have these bones exposed. Or Mission San Miguel, Soledad, and Mission San Antonio, which we found out later, and I'll explain that in a minute. Mission San Miguel was, and the sign out front read, "We've chosen this place for the abundance of Salinan Indians." Therefore, that they had workers, and that's what they were going to be used for. And when they ran out of Salinans or Ohlones, they went into the get further east and got Yoka, and just to build these missions. And in the gift shop, I mean, in the church, the main church, their artwork was, it was ridiculous. It told on themselves. They had pictures, artwork of a soldier with his foot on clearly a darker person and a sword, and he had the world in his hand. You know, it was amazing that they can't see that is just, it's ingrained in their being. So it was just an amazing experience. Mission Santa Ynez. Santa Ynez, we were greeted by a padre. His name was Matt. And now keep in mind that they had just taken off the head of Una Pedicera statue in Monterey. So we were being watched closely. And when we got to Santa Ynez, he greeted us and said he was happy that we were there, and he showed us around, and we read all their propaganda about how they brought community to the people. And when I approached him and I asked him about that, he said, well, you know, we did bring community and, you know, taught them how to work together. And we're like, we've been here for tens of thousands of years before you. And he just couldn't believe that I would say that to him, I think. And then I asked him, if you are who you say you are, how can this be right, this canonization? And he said too, we just have to follow the Pope's instruction. So we went to the burial grounds, and he was hiding behind the bushes watching us to make sure that we weren't doing anything. Remember?
Yeah.
He was hiding behind the bushes, and until we left that day.
Yeah.
And then we climbed over Santinez Mountain at night in the dark. Because I thought taking out the flashlight, you thought I had the flashlight. But go ahead about Santa Barbara. Oh, go ahead.
Santa Barbara.
Tell me about Santa Barbara gathering.
Tell me.
Okay, our gathering in Santa Barbara, we were greeted by the Shumash, of course. And when we got there, we were greeted again by the groundskeeper there at the mission. And I'm sure they were there just to watch us. But they had food for us and water. And they stayed there with us the whole time. And we could see that they were watching us out of the windows of the second story. But they had an incident where people had gathered there before at the burial sites, the ancestor burials, and protested just a few months before. So that was something that they were looking to see if we were going to have problems or what have you.
Yeah.
But
I've recently learned about Santa Barbara Mission as well. In the early 70s, there was a native group, a Chumash group there from Santa Barbara that occupied the mission. They went in and they shut everything down. They locked it up and they occupied it for, I think it was 3 months. They were there for quite a while. And they basically had reclaimed the land at the time. The Catholic Church was forced to negotiate with them. I guess the local police really couldn't do anything about it because it was a peaceful demonstration. They weren't hurting anyone. And there was a legitimate dispute in their eyes to the land. So the Catholic Church ended up bartering with this group. They negotiated to have the Catholic Church buy up a few plots of land in Santa Barbara Mountains for the group, for that local tribe to do ceremony and to try and reclaim some of their indigeneity in their own homeland. I thought that was really interesting. Not ideal, just to have a new piece of land somewhere else, but very, very interesting to see that type of action going on so close to our time now. And I think that that's the way things are going basically here in our communities. Is a lot of young Indigenous people and a lot of older Indigenous people too really are realizing that that's what we need to do. Basically is you don't have any rights unless you demand them.
we need to stop asking for permission. Is the thing. We culture is not negotiable. It's never negotiable. I think that at this point forward that we do not negotiate with terrorists, because this is what they are. They are terrorists, and the only things that they understand is violence and money. And we need to stop and remember that we're sovereign. We're a sovereign people. We shouldn't have to negotiate with terrorists. And no matter how you look at it, these colonial Catholics or Ameri-Christian people, as we put it, are definitely terrorists when it comes to the Indigenous people of this nation. And everybody wants to tiptoe around this subject. Everybody wants to, well, we don't want to offend anybody. Well, you know what? I'm tired of not offending people that offend me. And recently, San Gabriel Mission was on fire. It got caught on fire. This is right when we were toppling the statues. And, I heard that most of the missions were on high alert, and they should be. They need to be on high alert. They need to remember that we are still here, and we're not going anywhere. And they need to understand that we're not going to assimilate. That the Indigenous people of today, right now, in this area or in California, are not going to assimilate to their practices. So I, for one, I'm not going to ask for permission. When we took down the statue at Mission 17, we went there to let them know that this statue was needed to come down, that it represented hate, it represented genocide, it was offensive, and if they didn't take it down, that we would. And that's pretty much what we said. We take the statue down or we will. Now you have to remember the week before, the statue in LA came down, and it came down hard. It came down and it hit the ground. Bing! You could hear it hit the ground. And I was like, I couldn't believe it, but afterwards I was like, that's what they needed to see. They needed to see, like, look, this is what happens. And this is going to continue to happen if you don't understand what we're talking about. We are not going to conform to their colonialism. We are talking truth. We're truth builders, and we are going to continue to tell the truth. And however we need to do that. And across Mission Indian territories, this is what's going on now. We have people that, you know, don't want to rock the boat. You know, we need to respect the ancestors. Well, you know what? The ancestors were resistant. The Kumeyaay burned down their mission twice. They killed a priest. They did not want to be there. I don't know where this mindset comes that the Native people, oh, well, that's the way we were raised. We're Catholic now. No, we're not Catholic. We were never Catholic. We were never, ever Catholic. That was a means of survival. This Christian value system has no place for us. And that's not because we said, it's because they said that there's no place for us. Just most recently, they let Native American people, if you're federally recognized, practice your own religious, spiritual ceremonies. In 1978, this country is 300 years old. How old is this country? 200 something? I don't even know. And they're just now in the 70s, some 30 years ago, allowing people to practice their own spiritual ways. This is genocide. It is definitely what's going on the border right now is genocide. Forced. People are unaware that they're giving hysterectomies. This is a Christian value system, a European value system that thinks that they have the right to go in there and do this to people. They're trying to kill a race of people. Where are all the people? How come people don't understand that this church is 90% of society's failures? 90% of society's failures, I believe, are on this Amero-Christian, European religious value system. And I bet you if we went into prison today, and we actually interviewed everybody, I guarantee you every single one of them would be directly related to that church or to that value system, because it's designed to kill us. That's what it's there for. And I, for one, will have nothing to do with it. I believe that we need to be sovereign if we're sovereign. And we need to stop worrying about what someone's going to think, because nobody gives a hoot about what we think. Nobody cares about what we think unless we protest, and we are not violent people. We're distinct people who want to be that kind of person. Our purpose in life is to take care of everything living, to stand in defense of everything sacred. Even though we are different tribal traditions or tribal culture systems, we still have one common purpose, and that is to defend everything sacred. And that's what's going on in this country. This is why we're in the situation that we're in. This is why our water is poisoned. This is why our food is poisoned. This is why our children are in cages at the border, because we have been taken so far away from our own selves that we're drinking and drugging and incarcerated because of this system. And until people start, where are all the people? Why aren't people standing up and saying, this church has for centuries molested children, for centuries? Where is every mother in the country should be on the doorstep? Every mother in the country should be on the doorstep. Why, where are all the people? Because they're afraid to deal with the church. The church runs this country. Everybody needs to understand that. And until we stand up as one peoples and say no more, they will continue to do what they're doing. And that's for real. That is real. When we got to Mission San Fernando, we walked down the 126 highway because we wanted to go by our ancestral village, which is at Cascade Junction. And as we were walking, we reached the LA sign, and Kagen and I stopped, and we looked at each other, and we're like, we walked home. We walked home, we were home, and we got to Mission San Fernando, and we had a beautiful gathering, but I have to tell you that it was the first time that my tribe, our people, had gathered at that mission ever, and sang and danced on our own land, ever. In all my 50 years at that time, never had we ever done that. And nobody there could recall ever a time. But my cousin Beverly will tell you about her great-grandfather's story about when he first went to that mission. There was an ancestor hanging in the church and hung all day for everybody to see. So they would be in fear and they would not leave. Father Lawson writes about the ancestors being in the forest, dancing naked in the moonlight. You know, this is their tribal, their traditions. They never wanted to be there. And for anybody to say, well, you know, Father Sarah was a man of his time, that's crazy. At no time should anybody be treated the way that the ancestors were treated, ever, ever. But this is their value system. You know, in 2012, the Pope announced that he had found St. Peter's remains underneath the Basilica, or somewhere in Spain. And he put them in this little ornate box and put them on display, and there he stood, you know, and it's like, if he understood that if we had found St. Peter's remains, we would have left him in the ground. Just as we respect our own ancestors, we would have left them in the ground, but we are the only people that still have to fight to keep our ancestors in the ground. We have to fight to keep them in the ground, and once they unearth them anyways, we have to fight to put them back in the ground. We have ancestors in boxes at universities across the state. There was a cemetery in Glendale in 2007 who got in trouble or indicted or whatever for digging up burials. They were digging up burials and putting them in a back room so they could dig more burials. They went to prison. Why? Because these are white people or European people that they're digging up. And this is a fact. Because they dig up our ancestors all day long. And we negotiate with developers to send people in and, you know, get out what we can and protect, you know, put them in boxes and put them at the university or put them at the morgue or whatever. We need to stop doing that. We need to stop negotiating with terrorists. To build your shopping mall somewhere else. Take your housing, your 24 new housing development and 18 bridges and 4 schools or what have you, and take it somewhere else. Because these are our ancestral lands. You can't have everything. But I don't know what's going on with our tribal leaders. I personally think my tribal leaders are really cool, but this is something that needs to be done. We need to stop negotiating with these people. We have Karina Gould in San Francisco or in the Bay Area who's been fighting to save her last shell mound for the 5 years that I've known her. Yeah. You know, why are we the only ones that have to do that? Why are we the only people that have to fight to keep our ancestors in the ground?
Yeah. No one is, you know, petitioning to develop Forest Lawn, which is the famous cemetery here, you know, or Hollywood Forever Cemetery. But every single Indian burial ground in California is being developed or has been developed.
And I'll point out too that every Air Force base, Navy base, Army base are on ancestral lands. Why? Why? Because there's something going on there. Look at Rocketdyne in Simi Valley. That has been destroyed. It was one of the world's most horrendous nuclear disasters in history.
Still is.
It still is. And they're still cleaning it up. But now the nuclear waste is in the water table at Canoga Park. And that's a sacred site for the Tataviam, for the Tongva, for the Shumash. People came from all over to that ceremonial site, and they have destroyed it with nuclear waste, to the point that they're still poisoning us, and they still don't recognize us as people. This is madness. It's absolutely shameful. Shame on this country for the crimes that you've committed against humanity and still commit today. And their history books that are so full of lies. I can't believe that we send our children to school. Why are we sending our children to school? Why are we allowing them to make mini missions? You know, we've heard stories about people making missions and setting them on fire. And my cousin made a cake and cut it up in little bitty pieces. This is what these missions are about. These missions that we see now in California, they're beautiful. You know, they're just, the grounds are beautiful. They got rose gardens, they got beautiful chapels, and all the gold in California is in these churches. But these are not the churches that our ancestors lived in. Our ancestors lived with no plumbing, no bathrooms, no food, no children. They took their children away from them. They separated from their husbands. They were being raped daily. And this is the missions that you see now, where California collects money on the backs and the blood of our ancestors with tourist trap missions that they have. And they're El Camino Real bells, 1900 bells that mark the El Camino Real trail where the missionaries went from mission to mission. It's a tourist trap. And the state of California makes a lot of money from those. Kagen's idea is to repurpose these missions. Tell them about that.
Yeah, well, that would be the ideal scenario for me would be regarding the missions themselves, the mission buildings and the, the grounds that are public or that are open to the public would be returned to their local tribe, the most likely descendants of the people who were enslaved at those missions. And yeah, repurposed as, cultural education centers where people can come and learn, one, the true history of the mission system, two, a little bit about the ancestral territory which they live, and hopefully that will inspire people to, have a little bit more respect for, the land that we live on.
They have to. I mean, we as Indigenous people need to change the way we are doing things too. And I see a lot of people saying, well, San Diego, I'm in Kumeyaay territory, or I'm in Los Angeles, I'm in Tonga homeland, or I'm in the Bay Area, I'm in Ohlone, the homeland. We have to keep reminding ourselves of who we are and letting people know that we're still here, that we are the descendants of the first people here. And most of the descendants do not live in their ancestral lands because they can't afford it. Who can live in Carmel or Santa Cruz or San Francisco for that matter? We live in concrete villages. And it's a shame that we don't have any of our land that we could call our own. Yeah. My tribe is working on land, what are they calling it? Land conservancy, and with the developer. But again, we should not negotiate with developers. We can buy our own land back if we do what I say we should do. I think that we should have, I can go door to door and ask everybody, $1. If everybody in the San Fernando Valley alone just gave us $1, we could buy our own land back, and not ashamed. We have to buy our own land back. And most businesses or people that live in this area, they have no idea that we even existed, and that's because the Catholic Church did such a great job at erasing us, or trying to erase us.
Yep.
So
yeah, there is nowhere in our homeland where you can really go and learn about where you live and whose land you're on.
Kagen works at the Shumash Museum in Thousand Oaks, and there's school groups that go through there, just as they do tour groups to the missions, and just as many children hear what he has to say as they do this false narrative of these missions, and they're romanticizing everything that they did for the Indian people, because we couldn't survive without them, I suppose, tens of thousands of years before they got here. But and we're still here. We are still here.
Yes.
So when we got to Mission San Luis Rey, oh, okay. So we're at Mission San Fernando the next day after we had our gathering, and there was a priest there. I asked him, can I speak with you a minute? I wanted to talk to him. And he came charging at me. He had a green and white robe on, and he was bigger than life, and he was frightening. He came to me and he said, "You're a liar. You are a liar. Your people were perverse. They were committing human sacrifice, and you're a liar. And the missionaries did a good job, God knows," he said. And then Kagen chimed in with,
well, I corrected him. First of all, and then I was, don't talk to my mom like that. She was just being so disrespectful, and that is, exactly how they're taught to view, Indigenous peoples, not only of the past but of the present. Like I was talking about South America, he was actually went to seminary pretty close to Bolivia, where I was talking about earlier, and this is what they're taught even to this day. They're taught that Indigenous peoples and Indigenous beliefs are perverse, and that these people are unworthy to hold their own lands. So that justifies them going in and, taking their lands, taking their resources, taking their children, taking their women, and all of this still happens all the time. And the Catholic Church is one of the spearheads that goes into Indigenous, territories still today, and opens it up for this capitalist expansion. And we just keep seeing it, and it's recreating itself within our own communities as well. We see that, in the wealthier reservations sometimes, these systems of exploitation start to propagate themselves, and that is just another form of the trauma, inflicted by the Catholic Church.
So this padre himself, he said, you know, you're a liar, God knows, and Kagen asked him not to speak to me like that. And I said to him, you know, 90% of Native people died at the hands of the Catholic Church. 90% of Native people died at the hands of the Catholic Church. And Kagen said, my ancestors built this place. And when he said that, that priest stood there and looked at Kagen like he was in shock, like he couldn't respond to that, because what are you gonna say? He was in shock. Well, he said, somebody got it on video, and we have that on video. And we have yet to do anything with that, but I know that I would like to take it to the Archdiocese and show them that this priest that day had just got out of seminary. So he just learned how we were perverse and committing human sacrifice, and that's why he spoke to me the way that he did, and called me a liar. But nobody can call me a liar, because everything I'm telling you right now is true. Everything I'm saying about these missions are true. They're all the same, just a little bit different. And Mission San Luis Rey, when we got down there, we were greeted by Mel Vernon and some of his people. And lo and behold, there was a gentleman who showed up. His name was Mark Day, and he was a former Franciscan priest. And he had left the order some 30 years before, and he was now riding with the Indigenous people and in solidarity and supporting us on all efforts to regain ourselves, our culture, our life ways, and he still today supports us in that manner. So when we arrived, and there's a lot of synchronicity on this walk, when we arrived in San Diego in the Kumi Islands, Kagen and I walked 20 miles that day, and we got kind of turned around, and it was getting dark, and we were kind of like not a really good area, and Kagen, every time we got lost, we knew we got lost for a reason. And Kagen looks up at the road signs, and it says Rancho Mission Road and Ward Road. And he said, I guess we're supposed to be here right now, right this day, Mom. So that was just another clarification of why we walked and what we did. And I'll share the story real quick. My grandmother, my dad's grandmother raised him. And I used to stay at her house when I was a kid, and I must have been 7 or 8 years old, and I was climbing up on her bed, which was huge, and I could hear her talking to my aunt on the phone, and she said to my aunt, don't bring me flowers when I'm dead. Buy yourself a pair of shoes, you're gonna need them. And it wasn't until we arrived in Sonoma that first day that I realized what that meant. And I do believe that our ancestors put us on a path and keep pushing us in the direction that we need to be in to do the things that we do and to be who we are. And that's what she meant. Buy yourself a pair of shoes, you're gonna need them. And we certainly did. Because shoes only last 500 miles, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, they're only good for 500 miles. And yeah, I bought a pair of Asics at REI. They were last me like 600 miles. So. But in San Diego, we were greeted. We went to the park and we met the people that wanted to walk with us into the mission that day. And my aunts were there, and which was pretty amazing. And there was a lot of people there, but walking in there, I got a phone call from Jim Igo, and he says, where are you guys? And I said, well, we're not far. I understand we're like 10 minutes. And he said, you have people here from both sides of the border, Caroline. And at that time, I didn't know that the Kumeyaay, that line, that man-made line separates the Kumeyaay tribe. There's some on what they call Mexico and some here in what they call America. And it was just a really moving time because we did it, we got there, and there were a lot of people there, and they had bird singers and dancers, and Stan Rodriguez led the ceremony that afternoon. And Carlos Pelayo was there, James Villalobos, may he rest in power. Jamie LeBrake was there, rattling, and several other people. But Laughing Coyote was there with Corinne Fairbanks, and they were doing. They were speaking in the circle, and Laughing Coyote was talking about the Star Children and how we relate to the celestial world. And if you look at our rock art, you'll see that. But right when Laughing Coyote was done talking about that, I got up to say goodnight to everybody, and I had the microphone in my hand, and all of a sudden this light came out of the sky, and it was like, whoosh, it was right in front of us, this huge tunnel of white light. And it was, everybody's looking at each other like, what is that? And it went boom, 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 again and again. And it was like white and light blue. And we stood there, everybody stood there in silence for what seemed to be 5 minutes. But the next day, the Navy said that they had launched. But at the end of the ceremony, a woman, Gloria, came up to me and she said, those were your ancestors. The gifts that you have, your gifts have been received and accepted. And it was at that moment that I knew that everything that we had learned along this journey had changed my life. And it made me want to be me. And that's who I am right now. And it was, everybody who walked with us, for us, everybody who sent money for us to get to where we were going, every tribal leader that met with us, our tribal leaders were great to us. And anybody who came in contact with our walk family, with Kat, Greg, Malia, Chuck, and Kagen and myself, we will never, ever forget your part in that. So we're ready to take questions if anybody has any questions.
Yes.
All right.
Jason, are you there?
Let's give a warm San Diego thank you, or a Kumeyaay area thank you.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Let's give a warm Kumeyaay tribal land area thank you to
Right on.
Caroline and Kagen.
Thank you. Thank
They're
you.
still muted, so they're
They're fiddling with the thing, trying to unmute it. Clap.
That's cool.
We feel you.
Yeah, we're new to Zoom as well.
But thank you for giving us the opportunity to share. Tashna. Hey.
so
I'm crying
It's
over here.
cute.
I love you so much.
I love you too, girl. Thank you.
is
Part
this,
of our walk, people.
Yeah.
it was such a powerful talk with so many things that were learned. Okay, so I have the first question that I have that I need to ask, just because, at least from my own personal edification, and if I have this question, I'm sure a lot of other people have this question. So what names are preferred? Indian, Indigenous, Native American?
I don't ever want to be called
All
American.
except for the last one.
Yeah, Native American implies that I am violent and superficial. I mean, I'm a.
We don't want to be associated with the
we're sorry.
imperial
Yeah.
powers.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So
you know.
Indigenous, I still use the word Indian. Some I thought Columbus was wrong, but I think it's a very strong word, and I don't mind the word Indian. But I guess it would depend on the people. But I can tell you one thing: none of us want to be called Native American or American Indian. So
Yes.
yeah. So we're tribal people.
I say indigenous, I think, most often, because I like to keep in mind that it's not just people here on what we call Turtle Island. It's people all over the world that are in a real connection with their ancestral land. Those are the indigenous people.
Earth people.
If you have a strong connection with your ancestral land, you know, where your people's spirit was born, then you're indigenous to me.
Yeah, because someone named Charles in the chat brought up another term that is used extensively throughout Canada, and I don't know if it's extensively used in the United States, and that's First Nation.
First Nation, I don't mind that, or I'm direct descendant of the first people, or, you know, I'm Caroline, but I definitely do not want to be an American Indian or Native American.
I also, I respect anyone who wants to be called First Nations. You know, it's tribal sovereignty is what it is. You can call yourself what you want. I would stray away from using the term nation for myself. Just nations, again, you know, I want to keep in mind this is Indigenous is not just, you know, you belong to this group, you know, this nation or that nation. It's a way of living.
We're Turtle Islanders.
Yeah.
Turtle Islanders is what.
It's a way of living and a relationship.
It's a relationship to your lands.
So that's why I like to use Indigenous.
What other questions do we have? I don't want to hog the floor because I have a dozen questions that I'm going to ask in the next, I don't know how many minutes, but what other questions do we have, or what other reactions do we have? Because I had people messaging me throughout the talk how powerful it was and how upset people were that by the painful elements of the past, which is the necessary and an appropriate reaction, because a lot of this stuff many of us hadn't heard before. So,
You know,
so Larry, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Hey, thanks very much for that explanation, the talk that both of you gave. It's very useful information to know. I have a question, and it relates to two things you said earlier, well, about 20 minutes ago or so. You said culture is not negotiable, and we were never Catholic. And my question is, if when I look at the website for the Fernando Mission, it says Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, and I'm wondering, is that a voluntary word choice using mission, or is there an effort to disassociate that from Indigenous?
it would be my effort to take off the Fernandeño, but the Fernandeño is respectful to the tribal people that were taken to that mission. That's why we say Fernandeño. If you were a troublemaker at one mission, they would take you to somewhere else. So there was a lot of different languages and a lot of different people in that mission. We are Tataviam and Katanamuk, and but the people that came from other areas is the ones we refer to as Fernandeño. And the Mission Indians, I think it's because we, those are our homelands. Those are actually village sites. Where our village is, where that mission is in San Fernando, Mission 17, that's an actual village site. So that is a personal choice. It's not something I would choose, but it's our official tribal name.
I've spoken to our tribal president about our name before, because there's well, it's very long. So like in email chains, you know, people don't even like to write it. They just always say Tataviam.
Yeah.
But he has informed me that partially the reason that we use Fernandeño and Mission in the name is for, because we are in the process of fighting for our federal recognition from the United States government. And these are basically qualifier words to help classify us into, you know, so they understand who we are and where we're coming from. When you apply for federal recognition, there's a very long process of, you know, going through family histories, genealogies, and all of that.
They want to know everything about you then.
They want to know everything about you. And so partially having that in the name is a political designation, you know, of being a mission Indian, saying that these are the circumstances that our ancestors, you know, went through. This is where we're coming from now. We are the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians.
Because not
Which
everybody
is to
in our
say,
tribe
we are a group of people that were brought into the missions, and now our community is continuing on, you know, to the present day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I think the political reasons make sense, because it sounds like to me, like as an outsider, that it sounds like there's a voluntary identification of Indigenous peoples with the Catholics. It's like we are Catholic is what it sounds like.
I think that's part of our truth building too. Yes, we were in the mission system, but we're telling the truth and getting rid of that narrative that the church has bestowed on everybody for so long.
This is, you know, back to the original question as well. I think they're related. You know, do you prefer Native American or Indian or Indigenous, or what do you prefer? Like, I hate to be crass, but I would prefer to speak my own language. That right now is not an option. Our language is, you know, stolen away from us in these missions. So I think partially the language barrier is a problem. You know, the way we would like to express ourselves doesn't, we don't have that capacity right now, you know? So we're using English words to try and classify ourselves so that the English world will understand us.
Got it. Thank you.
That makes sense to me.
Thank you so much. This talk has been amazing. I've learned a lot. Early on, you mentioned that, this myth of California held a lot of power in pushing these, the conquerors forward. So what kind of myths do you think we have today that perpetuate this violence against Indigenous people, and also like keep us from taking action in solidarity with you?
Today, the myths that we're under, that we live in a free market, that we live in a free society, that, that all people are equal under the law. I think these are all powerful myths that, allow us to perpetuate the system that we're under. It is, if you really sit with yourself and ask yourself, what does it mean to be an American, or to be, part of the Western world, to be part of Christianity. You need to look into the myths that you believe in, or that you're, maybe not even aware of. I think the Pledge of Allegiance is like one that has come up a lot recently. Yeah, one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. If you say it enough times, you might believe it. You know what I mean? So things like that, and of course, we're in a society where we're constantly inundated with media. Many of the tropes that we see in our movies, entertainment, music, television, all of it is based in, or a lot of it is based in, these traditions of, white supremacy, of Christian supremacy, of, just capitalist value systems, things like that.
I'd just like to say that as far as Indigenous people and Chicano people, Latin American people, the struggle is real. People have no idea what going ons are behind, because they don't need to know. It doesn't affect them. And that's white privilege. When you know what's going on, but it doesn't affect you, so forget about it. It's not a big deal. There's so much going on in our world that people are unaware of, that just take a step back and out of your box a minute and try to understand what it's like to fight for your ancestors to burial sites. Look at Pavunga at Cal State Long Beach. Cal State Long Beach is threatening to destroy an ancient burial site, an ancient village site where all the tribes gathered. Cal State Long Beach should be held responsible for crimes against humanity, against us as the descendants of these people, when they're trying to protect them. Rebecca Robles, Michelle Castillo are out there timelessly trying to protect these burials. And Cal State Long Beach just wants to plow through them and build more dorms and a shopping center. How can that happen? So that's something that people need to be aware of. The Kumeyaay are at the border fighting to protect their burials from this ridiculous wall that the president wants built. This is a constant. If you are Indigenous, there's always something that needs to be done. And I believe that all California tribes, all of us, should be behind each other for every struggle that we're facing. There's more in numbers, is what I say. So when I know that something's going on with another tribe, we just let people know this is what's going on with our relatives here. This is what's going on here at Pavunga, and have everybody show up. They do try to destroy that site. There's going to be a lot of Indian people out there with camping gear, and we will sit down. So shame on Cal State Long Beach, for real.
Question: what was the at least before the Europeans came? So go back 1,000 years or 1,500 years. What was the relationship between the different tribes? Did they keep themselves separate? Why did they not amalgamate all into one culture? And did they get along, or did they war with each other or not? what was the relationship going back, say, 1,000 years from now, before the Europeans come? What was the culture like, and the relationship between the tribes?
I would just like to point out that we know that there are sites where all the tribes gathered, marketing, where there was trade and barter and trading. Pabunga's one of them. Rockadine is another, where we would gather together and have ceremonies. So to my knowledge, there is no evidence of any war, for straight up war here in California between the people. And they're still not. But Kagan's gonna add to that.
Yeah, no, so that's basically it. The relationships between different tribes were mostly based on trading, right? So you have, the obsidian trade coming up from, or coming down south from Mount Shasta, and then you've got shell beads coming up north,
With boats.
and there's tons of sites, yeah, where they're mutual shared territory, I would say the biggest barrier between the tribes was not like, not tensions based on this trade, but just the actual mountains, is what separated the territories, is what I find most often, is that they're separated by physical barriers. And then also, there's language barriers. So even within, like for instance, Chumash tribe, they have a lot of different bands within the Chumash. I think there's 8 or 9 different language groups, different dialects within the Chumash tribe. So that's like one thing that I would say is separate or prevented, larger like amalgamations of tribes. Also, you have to consider, like we were talking about myth. A lot of these tribes have different creation stories that inform their worldviews. So although you may be able to get together and trade and be peaceful, it doesn't mean that you have the same values.
They didn't need to.
Yeah, there was no need to
Not like America where everybody
unite
speaks
all the bands. Let's say
Yeah.
it was like a pre-contact NATO. Perhaps if they had, maybe things would have gone a little differently.
Yeah.
So basically,
I believe in my mind that we. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. You're talking. Go. You're still answering my question. I don't want to ask another one yet.
No, I was just saying that I believe that we're a peaceful people. When Europe got here, everything was destroyed. Really, I think that even their spirit at some point. But my grandmothers are Mary Cook Garcia and Margaret Rivera Ward. Both of them share one common ancestry, and that's Leandra Colta. And Leandra and her ancestors were known to have inhabited the Santa Clarita Valley prior to European contact. And I often wonder what that must have been. Sometimes I think that maybe we're our own ancestors. I don't know, that's my own theory, but I have one of my ancestors on a wax cylinder, and she's talking that this is a language I spoke to my father with, and this is the Espanol, and then she had learned Americano, and she said that, imagine those years where we have Rancho period, we have the missionary period, we have the United States period, where it's nothing but terror. It's terror. That the Americans won't let her have her favorite food, which is yellow abalone. I mean, they were raped and raped and raped over and over and over again. So I can't even fathom what that must have been like. And I think that everybody should take a minute and just think about that. This is not America.
Well, basically, the Europeans sent warriors over here. The first people that came here were people who were sent as conquerors. So that was their primary thing to start with. So that's what you got. Is there very much genetic diversity between the different tribes, or are they pretty much homogenous as far as that goes?
Genetic diversity. I'm not too big on I don't know.
And
genetics very much.
Any idea of how long the native, whatever you want, Native Americans, whatever, were here? Is it for thousands of years or
Not whatever. Wonder how long the people were here? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, have they been here for 5,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago? Is it been there, thousands of years or?
At least 14,000 is what we know.
Okay.
Right.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Very long.
So imagine. And
Brian,
then survive without Europeans.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for your talk. I wanted to know what you guys think about me writing a letter to the Catholic Church condemning what they have done to the indigenous people here in California and also across the country, US and South America.
Do it.
Absolutely. I would say do it. I think that's a good,
Send it to
thing to
Jose
do.
Gomez,
just not only,
the LA Archdiocese.
for yourself. I think it's a good thing to do. It's empowering, to, just to voice your opinions
Tell
to
everybody
the
you know.
power. Yeah, I would say tell everyone you can do the same thing and forward that same letter to your local assemblyman, your state, all the way up the line, all of your, public officials that may be able to, do the same. Imagine if all of our senators issued that same letter.
And then when we're in a struggle and people do go through the legislature and go through that American process to handle things, I mean, that's there. It's American people saying that this is wrong. It is wrong. And we're not asking for anything back. We're not asking for to give us all our land back or whatever. We're just saying, understand that this did happen and that the trauma and the cultural and historical trauma is real.
Yeah, my family is from, I have native, or should I say indigenous ancestry in my family, but it's like so far back. And
I say if you're indigenous, you're indigenous. That's it.
even though my family goes back a couple hundred years, so I don't know if I should be considered, because I don't know, because my family's Iroquois, from the Iroquois.
Okay. It's an old nation.
I would say, it doesn't matter, where or what your ancestry is. You don't need a specific blood quantum to understand these things and to feel these, these things. I think it's universal to see suffering and feel suffering, so.
It's not natural to want to kill people. It's not natural to want to hurt people. People just, we're talking,
these conditions are created.
it's not natural to want to put live people in walls and bury them alive. That happened at San Juan Bautista Mission. I'm telling you the truth right now. The ancestors have drafted pictures of torture devices and said that there's ancestors in these walls at these missions. It's a sick entity.
Should I send letters to the missions across the country, and then also the Vatican and the Nuncio in Washington?
So on this, note of tribal sovereignty and things like that, I would say maybe, since you are in San Diego, maybe get in touch with some of the local Kumeyaay groups and, see what their specific, concerns are with the mission today, and maybe use that as the template for your letter. Those concerns of the tribe are, they're valid concerns. So the more people we can get behind the concerns of the local groups, the better.
And we could give at the end, I could put on some contact people in Kumeyaay Nation. So that would be helpful for you, and that would help them. Everybody needs a voice, and especially of the community. This is the people that these legislature people listen to. So that's where I am with that.
so Jim, Velma, and then Richard.
I got it from the talk that the native indigenous people were pacifists. They got along by trade. but they couldn't communicate because they didn't have a single language. But now they do. So now they can unite and they can become cultural warriors and fight for change. But they're going to attract people that want to burn down missions or whatever. And some of the group will resort to violence instead of being non-pacifist. So it'll be interesting how your group grows. And eventually, they'll probably be labeled as terrorists because they're fighting the status quo. Comment.
I think that, I'm not saying we're all perfect and we don't have problems.
It would be an honor to reach that level.
But I'm not saying that we all sat around and just were pacifists or anything. Apparently we weren't. But I think now, as people, as Indigenous people across the state or the mission tribes or what have you, that there was an incident at the border where a woman came and started attacking the Kumeyaay people, and they didn't fight back. They got her out of there in a timely fashion and did not retaliate. You know, it's not what we're about. We're not protesters. We're protectors.
Yeah. I was back on the pacifism thing. I would definitely say that that's not universal for especially the further away from our tribe that you go. I'm sure there are many warrior cultures who pride themselves on their ability to conduct warfare. But on the West Coast, it wasn't that they were necessarily pacifists. I think there was not a huge reason for them to go to war. There's an abundance of resources. There is, obviously the weather's very nice. Conditions are very conducive to a peaceful life here in this part of the world. So I would say that's what contributed to mainly them relating only through trade and not through warfare.
The ancestors, they did have business. They made, the Chumash made tumals, plankton boats, and sold them to the other tribes so they were seaworthy and they could go out deep sea fishing. And we talk about, the obsidian or the shell beads, and shell beads were money. So, and some of these, like the Chumash and the people at the Pichenga, they were wealthy. They had beads. They had a lot of beads they could buy, So I think that it was life without chaos. I mean, I can almost assure you that there wasn't people going around raping people and murdering people without consequence. I think, like I said, 90% of society's failures were brought here. I think, personally. I'm not saying we're all perfect, but if it was up to me, I'm not a violent person by any means, but I'm tired. I do not feel that we need to ask for permission for anything anymore. We've had it. We're done negotiating for things that are rightfully our inherent birthright to be a part of. That's all I'm saying. My ancestral village is where Six Flags Magic Mountain is, if anybody's aware of that. It's in Castaic Junction. And when they built that magic mountain on our mountain, they actually, it's told that they put our ancestors' remains in the riverbed. They put our ancestors' remains in the riverbed. And that just goes to show that they're not a big deal. They erased us already. I'm not saying we were here first or that line, but people need to realize that America is occupying our homeland. We're currently under occupation.
Yeah.
And America's not doing so well, The ancestors say that we'll watch them come and we'll watch them go, and that could very well happen in this time, how far are you going to get with white supremacy is rampant. I don't care who you are, you have to see it. With our police, policing, that's what these people are doing. They're not here to protect and serve. It's scary. It is scary.
Yeah.
It's very, very scary.
I was in LA yesterday. It looked like, there's
the sheriff's
the cops
department.
look like they're in Fallujah. So
Yeah, it's the sheriff's. There's no even common respect. It's like they were punk ass kids when they were little, and now they were bullied, and so they want to, that's what their whole persona is. In Newhall, that sheriff's station right there is the smallest, biggest racist sheriff department in the nation. I'm sure of it. And that Newhall itself is where our homeland is, and it was where the KKK held all their meetings. Nobody knows that. Nobody understands that. They're still there. They're still there. And not much has changed in 300 years.
So Velma, Richard, and then Mark.
Okay, yeah, I had to unmute myself. Anyway, I just wanted to make a comment in regard to a question that somebody had earlier, who's attending this presentation, asking how long have Indigenous people been in these lands? And I just read recently where in Mexico, in the cave of Chiquihuit, I think it's called, so it would be in southern Mexico, they found stone tools that they dated 25,000 to 30,000 years. So it was a pretty important discovery. And that discovery challenges a lot of modern archaeology theories that Indigenous people have only been here for, 10,000 years or so. I think Indigenous people have always known that we've been here way longer. And so I just wanted to mention that. Also, I wanted to ask about Cal State Long Beach. Is there a website or something where if we wanted to get updates on what's going on there that we could contact online?
Absolutely, and I'll have that for you at the end. I'll get that information for you right now. And I'll send it to Jason so he can post it.
Thank you. And Richard, you have a question.
Yeah, I had asked if I live in the Santa Clarita Valley, just north of you, and I was wondering if we are in your original Tataviam land, and you've answered that question. Yes. But the other part of my question is where can I learn accurate information about the Indigenous people of this area? And
Leon Warden. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. That's the third question. So go ahead.
Leon Warden has a website. He is the president of Santa Clarita Valley News, and it's Santa Clarita Valley News history at Tataviam Culture. And thank you for asking. And he has it in a timeline, and I think that everybody should find a historian or someone like Leon to do this for them, because it's a written timeline of our existence.
It's been a really good resource for us.
Yes.
What's the last name again? Leon who?
Warden, W-O-R-D-E-N. And he's a friend of the people.
Yeah.
And he had a Santa Clarita Valley history on Facebook, and I called him one day and I said, this doesn't say anything about the people. And so we worked together and started this page that he has, and it just tells stories about our ancestry and the going-ons in that area prior to, or since America's been here, but you'll find news on the Tataviam for sure.
And then also there's our tribal website, which is Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. If you Google that, we're the first one. And there's some good information there. Our tribal administration building is in downtown San Fernando, also there on the website. And that's, I don't know what our COVID restrictions are right now, but I mean,
yeah, it's closed.
Yeah, but I think they can put you in touch with Alan Salazar, and he has also been a really good resource to me on the historical front.
Alan is Chumash and Tataviam.
Yes.
Well, we all are. We are, my family we are 9 of the 21 missions. At some point, we have been there.
Okay. Thank you.
So
I also just wanted to let you know, I'm the president of the Santa Clarita Atheists and Free Thinkers. And even though we all have, right now, we all have transparent skin, we can be allies because we both at least share disdain for the hegemony of the Christian system here. And we challenge it constantly. Not nearly to the extent that your people have suffered, but we suffer from it too.
Everybody does.
Everyone does.
Everyone does.
You know,
And they don't even realize it. They're so ingrained in being in fear of heaven and hell that they're not living.
Yeah.
They're not living.
No.
So that's, this is, we have, I'm gonna say this, we have a lot of people in my tribe that are Catholic or Christian. And I firmly believe that this value system should not be in a position to make decisions for me as a Native person. This is a different colonial mindset, and I don't believe that they should. So, and I've said that out loud, and I'll say it again. I do not believe that tribal leaders who have a cross around their neck should be making decisions for Native people. I don't believe that they should be leading prayer, and I don't believe that they
have our best interest.
They have our best interests at heart because they are embracing the colonial system that came here to kill us.
Yes. It's definitely an ideological conflict of interests.
Yes, exactly. Somebody needs to explain to me how this is okay. And yeah, no, I do not understand how that works, but it doesn't work for me. And it shouldn't work for anybody.
And it's such a precarious position to be in, to tell, our own tribal people, it's like, what are you doing? Why?
I prayed for a way to say it to them in a manner that they don't feel like they're being attacked.
Yes.
But everything I do is with the best of intentions. I'm trying to help them. I'll be right back. Go ahead, Kagen.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a weird position to be in, to be telling someone that they shouldn't believe what they believe, especially, considering our history. We don't want to be colonizers ourselves and impose our own type of hegemony upon people either. But, like my mom said, it is an ideological conflict of interest to have, your Christian Indian leaders. Yeah, they're fundamentally, opposed.
There's got to be negative compromises there.
Yeah.
Mark, Larry, and then Martin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me. Oh, that's good. Good. I have a question and a concern, and it's really good. Kagen and your mom, thank you so much. We had many conversations about this, So as some of you may know, I was a Franciscan. I lived at 3 missions, studied at 3 missions. And over the years, I've been doing a lot of research on this. And of course, I saw the light because I gave tours at the missions way back in the 60s that could only be described as bullshit because we were telling the colonial narrative at that time. And so a lot of water has gone under the bridge. My question and my concern is, okay, how do we move the needle forward now? The young man with the Iroquois ancestry hit the nail on the head. Like so many people, he wants to do something. And Caroline, you met hundreds of people and you made connections with thousands of people. I'll never forget that woman in Templeton. You remember that woman in Templeton? She was a gringa, a non-native. And she said to you, Caroline, you know what? I don't have DNA. I'm not a native, she says, but I have a lot in my heart. And that remark really, so yes, the people, now I worked 4 years as an organizer with the United Farm Workers in Delano as a friar, and they all told us, you can't do this. You cannot win a union in agriculture. It's never been done. It's never going to be done. But you know what? We did it because of the leadership of Chavez and some historical conditions. But if you can get people together, they can move a lot of people. Now, let me just say something. The Franciscans and the Catholic Conference in California are in a very vulnerable position because they know they're wrong. But as you mentioned, Caroline, the native Californians, whatever you want to call them, are splintered. There needs to be an organizing force going. And I'm hoping that all these strands could be pulled together, and we could put an organizing committee together. You can do that. Obviously, I'm just a support person, but if that can be done, I think it can be done. It's going to take a long time, but they are look at this idiot Archbishop in San Francisco having an exorcism in Golden Gate Park against the Indians. How absurd is that? How absurd is that? You know, and so they know they're wrong, and so they have small groups of people that support them, all very pious, all praying and all that. But I think that now we have Governor Newsom on our side. Jerry Brown wasn't. He's an ex-Jesuit. He was fomenting the same relationship with civil society and the government traditionally, the old narrative. Now we have a new day. So that's all I'm saying. I would love to see this. I'll do everything I can to help it. Maybe some of you have some remarks about this.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
You know, where I think is a good place to start is we as California Mission Indian tribes have, as I said, we know what's going on in each other's territories, and I think that we all have a really good relationship, and I think that we as people are strong in numbers. We and I'm not, when I say, you know, we have Catholic people in our tribe, these are still our people, you know, and everything that we say is to help them understand what's going on. But we're all, at the end of the day, we're all Indigenous people, and I think that we have a strong relationship with each other as tribal people. And so many American people, such as yourself, understand the struggle and are there to stand with us. Look at Cat Wilder and Celine Cotton and Martin Rizzo, and just people that want to see they want to see our, as Nicolani would say, our tribal lands return to their true splendor, and that is being able to be Indigenous people as we are. So definitely, I know I got your emails, and I think that that is something, and anybody who's listening who is Indigenous in California, Mark is a good person for us to connect to. And he's the one I told you about at Mission San Luis Rey that came to our gathering, and we were like, he showed up. But, you know, a good place to start is these organizations that support the church. The church doesn't pay for anything. They don't pay for their plaques. They don't pay for their statues. They don't pay for anything. So like Native Daughters of the Golden West, what nerve they have to call themselves a Native. I think they dropped the Native part, but I sent them an invitation to this talk because I want them to see the errors of their ways, that they are perpetuating this evil that the church is trying to sell to us still. And that they support this organization that is criminal. They are downright criminal. So they need to reflect on themselves and see what they're doing to their organization as well. And I asked them to talk with them, to come to their meetings and try and let them know what's going on and how they literally perpetuate the genocide of the people with their narrative. And they haven't responded yet, but I hope that they accept my invitation and are watching today and understand that this is the truth. You know, we're truth builders, and this is, you can't live without the truth. How do you live without truth in anything? So it's hard to accept, but it is still the truth. And everybody has the right to their own opinion. No, right. So thank you, Mark, and
thank you very much. Thank you,
I
everybody.
mean, if anyone on this chat wants to begin to organize, you know, like a letter writing campaign, I think that's a great idea. My goal, like I said earlier, is ultimately for the mission grounds themselves to be turned back over to the locals. To be turned back over to their local tribes. And I think if the more tribal leaders we can get on board with this, the more local community leaders we can get on board with this. And yeah, I mean,
then
I think
the
a letter writing campaign is a good way to
the
start.
legislature has to follow because those are votes. You know, and we need to ask these people, what are your views on Indigenous struggles? And if they don't answer you, well, then there's your answer, because they don't care. So we need to get these people out. I don't participate in American politics for obvious reasons, but that's, if people go, I mean, if you stand behind and in solidarity with Native peoples, and then we could make this happen. You know, these missions need to be repurposed. That's the first and foremost. The missionaries need to be out of these sanctuaries that they call them, and the rightful people need to be there teaching about truth.
I mean, every tribal leader that we've spoken to is basically on the same page. They would love to see the missions return to their rightful, owners or rightful caretakers.
As they were supposed to be.
Not the missions themselves, the mission lands.
The mission lands.
The mission lands return to their rightful caretakers. And I mean,
it has to start with the state of California.
Why there hasn't been momentum around returning the land itself in the past years, I can't really say. I think that, having support from outside the Native community is really important. That's one thing that we saw in the walk was, I mean, Indigenous people, when we gather together, I feel like there is an understanding, a mutual understanding of our past and where we are, together. And then, when outside groups want to further that, I feel like it can only strengthen the bonds between Indigenous people.
And heal,
you know what I mean?
and heal people that are not Indigenous. I mean, imagine, my mother's a European, and she lived with this guilt of what happened to the Indigenous people for all my life, and she's the one who taught us about who we were. So it's healing people who are not Indigenous too, because this is, like I said, society's failures start there, because they are part of that unbeknownst to, I mean, they were born into that. So I think that's part of white guilt, that they, why they're so resistant to wanting to see Native people succeed, if I can say it like that. I mean, there's got to be healing on everybody. This is it's got to start with healing. Yes.
This is something that I feel like I should bring up, because you told me to get this book, and I don't mean to interrupt the flow of the conversation, but you told me to get this book, and I read this book today, and this is an important work. It came out in 2015, and it's a book that I think all of us should pick up, and it's Cross of Thorns.
Yeah. Elias Castillo was the author of that book. May he rest in power, because he changed the way that people look at these missions. Anybody who's read that book, and it's, truth be told, I mean, look at it. If you read the part where Unapeta says to the King of Spain that we have two harvests about the Salinan people. And he says, one of the children's souls who were dying under their crops. I mean, what kind of sick mind is that? Because they believed that all those souls gave them credit or something when they went to heaven or what have you. And then they celebrated the death of children, or I do not see by what reason my Indians should not be whipped. Keyword there, my Indians should not be whipped. When writing to the King of Spain, there was a Russian explorer who was here, who was went back to his people and said that he had never ever seen any people, human beings, treated in the manner that the Native people were treated. So it's not just we're crying, oh, look what they did to us. I mean, it's a disturbing history that most people don't know about.
So Martin and then Larry.
Hey, Martin.
Hey, so good to see you guys always. I think I just have a couple quick questions. Question is, and I think Kagen, you started to respond to this, but I'm just curious. I know that you both have a lot of really great ideas, so I just kind of want to open up to say, what's next in terms of the stuff that you guys are thinking, ways to get out truth in history and ways to get this message out. What's next for you guys? And then also, what are other ideas that other people who want to get involved, what can we do? I know Kagen mentioned letter writing, but I know that I'm sure you have other ideas too. So anyway, great to see you guys. It seems like they might have froze.
Hopefully Caroline and Kagen can join us back in just a second. But yes, this chat is going to be on YouTube. And yeah, we all absolutely need to work together. We need to take over. We need to fight back against Christian supremacy in our government. And while the mission system is still a holdover, it's not like it stopped. It's continuing to this day. It's absolutely continuing to this day. For example, a few weeks ago, we had Catherine Stewart, who wrote the Good News Club and Power Worshippers, about how Christian nationalists have infiltrated and taken over the US government. Next week, we are having a speaker, Andrew Seidel, about how these Christian myths about how America was founded aren't exactly true. They aren't exactly true. We weren't founded as a Christian nation. And it's up for all of us who want to fight for human rights. It's absolutely our burden to fight to keep this up. And I brought up that book that Caroline mentioned to me the other day about Cross of Thorns, about life in the mission system. And she brought up how one individual who rebelled against the missionaries was tied up, was wrapped in a fresh calf skin, and in the sun it dried and it suffocated him. Not only that, but we had lots of instances where Indigenous people who stood up against the mission system would have crosses branded into their faces. We had people put in squalid conditions where there were no sanitation facilities, where people were starved. And then finally, after this entire mission system destroyed everything, where there were no villages anymore, people after Mexico, because it was Mexico at the time, after Mexico issued a proclamation that priests could no longer enslave people, people were just free to a world where their lives were gone. And this is something that should make, apparently, and it is making all of us angry. So yeah, we're gonna work together. So on the second weekend of February 12th, we're going to come together again and spend an entire day, maybe even 2 days on Zoom, going through all of these particular factors and brainstorming of what we need to do to make the situation better. And Caroline and Kagen, welcome back.
Thank you. I didn't know if you guys knew we were gone. We're like, uh-oh. Carlos Pelayo, are you there? Carlos, is somebody else that you want to have on?
I'm here. I'm here.
And touch base on, the belief system and everything, but I think that you should take a whole segment to talk about that. So maybe you could come back when Jason does his program in February and talk about what we spoke about on Friday.
About all the syncretism of
Yes.
the indigenous beliefs.
Yes.
Yeah, I had you to look at a person called Tina Medodi, a 1930 or 40 photographer. And she wrote a book, I think, called Idols Behind the Saints, showing how the Catholic Church allows itself to be used by appropriated by other peoples because it has so many rituals, customs, saints, etc. And in fact, it was the result of the Spanish Inquisition. I think Charles V made the order convert them or kill them. And so you can't all commit mass suicide. So the strategy was, well, one would just become quote unquote Catholics on the outside and just replace those Catholic quote unquote practices and just put our stuff in there. And then hopefully you stay in your village and you get the updates. But unfortunately people move away. And so they don't know what the updates are. So they're lost in there. Become fall prey to other Christian missionaries. So yeah, that's the situation we're at today. But after the Second Vatican Council in the 60s, the church modernized, got rid of ceremonies and certain saints and rituals. And so the original people's strategy was exposed that the Catholic Church really did have control over this population. Remember in the 1960s when we had a lot of guerrilla movements in Latin America, especially in Mexico. And prior to that, the Catholic Church had a monopoly on proselytization in Mexico, that the Protestant faiths were restricted in coming into Mexico. But when they realized the church had no control over the native population, and their priests were involved in his insurrections as well, and the government realized, oh, we got to get these Protestants in there so we can teach more allegiance to the state. So this is the present state of affairs in Mexico. It was alluded in the declaration of Subcomandante Marcos in the Declaration of Malangan Jungle, what they endured in all this period of time and why they were forced to rebel in 1990. So the thing is that, now our ceremonies are coming out. They're stronger. People are saying, the hell with this. We're going to assert our practices, even if they have some Roman Catholic characteristics to it. But we know what they mean. And so this is, it's the way people have survived today. Our peoples have. And so little over time, as we start bringing back our ceremonies and we start practicing, then we start deconstructing this misconstructed belief system that was done just to survive the Inquisition. That's all.
So Carlos, I have a question. So would the Day of the Dead be included in the scope of the syncretic holidays?
It's interesting you brought that up.
And
because I'm heavily involved as Muertos here in San Diego for a number of years, a lot of people.
We have an atheist activist who has a Latin background. She has put together a secular version of the Day of the Dead. So further, more syncretism, expanding it out to make a secular Day of the Dead. So I'm just curious about your thoughts on the Day of the Dead.
You don't change what exists. I mean, of course you have All Souls Day. You have All Saints Day, which is the first, if you're raised in Catholicism, you know that a child is a saint. They go to heaven when they die. They automatically go to heaven. And on the 1st of November, the church honors saints, or those recognized role models who practice the faith and many die because of the practice of their faith. So those are saints. So the first day, November 1st, is for the angelitos, or the children. But the second day is for everybody else. And there's other days also. But the thing is that it's been adopted through Catholicism, modified. There were practices that predated the Christianity coming to the New World, and they had different ways of handling people who passed on. I guess it's a form of ancestral worship. People call it pagan, but how many dead relatives are on people's walls in their homes? It's a common practice all over the world to have images of dead relatives. So, it could be a form of ancestral worship. The whole point is remembering and knowing that the present world is a transitional place. We're going to another place to be with our relatives who have all left us, to be with our ancestors. So it's an anticipation. It helps you get through life. So whether if it's influenced by Christianity, it doesn't matter. The point is that how you practice that remembering. And so that's what it's about. It's remembering. And everybody has their own personal way of doing it, from elaborate altars or ofrendas to a simple table setting, or going to the cemetery and drinking with the deceased, eating and drinking with a deceased relative or relatives as a family or as friends. Drinking in honor of someone that just passed, and making that offering of liquor to the ground, to that brother, or woman, sister that passed. I don't think it's that big of an issue. Where I do have a problem, and I'm watching it creep in the last few recent years, is this new cult, this cult movement called the Santa Muerte. And that's another big issue, and it's entering in. I think it's coming, it's taking advantage of Dia los Muertos and creeping its way in. That's another thing, and it's gone into some of the danza ceremonies. I'd see it proliferating in Mexico. And that's something that people are still studying. But the Santa Muerte cult is something I think we need to be worried about because it's emerging. It's just, there's a lot of issues out there that's competing with the original people's spirituality and traditions. And Dia los Muertos, well, if you got to see Coco, that's Muertos 1. And I would recommend it as the best way of learning about Dia de los Muertos is the Watch Coco, that animation from Disney, because it changed everything. It changed Mexico because now they look at Halloween has no meaning. They went back to the traditions, and it's, you know, Muertos. There needs to be discussion on Muertos, but not in a negative sense. This is how is it allow? It's a way to come home, to get back to your traditions and roots and explore. And you're really not deconstruction, colonization. You're actually just finding a happy medium, you know. And it seems like one of the more positive things in the work, because you really can't. Well, I can't say that. The commercialization of Muertos, we could see it through the 99-cent store. How many products from China have come out? They saw a good market in Muertos. The last couple of years, a lot of product. But it's not like Halloween, where it's candy, 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 candy. But, you know, I don't know. That's as much as I could say on Muertos. I've been doing it for a good, God, almost 30 years, and pretty much in charge of the Muertos activities in Chicano Park. We have over 40 ofrendas, and they come from different traditions from all over, you know. So, and we're always learning. We're always learning new stuff. So.
Thank you, Carlos.
Larry.
Yes, a question for Caroline and Kagen. The United Nations has what they call the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and they have worked with indigenous populations in various places around the world for, you know, such things as climate change and rainforest preservation. And I'm wondering, in your efforts on Walk with the Ancestors, in the canonization of Sarah by the Vatican, and maybe subsequent efforts, have you tried going through them, through the United Nations?
Val Lopez would be our go-to person as far as being in front of the United Nations. And yes, he has on the issue of Sarah and indigenous peoples here in California. So, and Val is the tribal chairperson for the Amamutsan Ohlone out of San Benito County, San Juan Bautista Mission and Santa Cruz Mission. So Val Lopez would be the go-to person, and I will get with him right now and see if we could put his information. I know he's on YouTube. He's on YouTube, and it's Val Lopez, and it would be in front of the United Nations.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, addressing what the brother, previous speaker made a question. Take note, and he was correct in when he used the word indigenous populations. Population does not mean a people, does not mean human beings. I know, Carolyn, you answered with people, but that's not the correct term in the United Nations. We're still a population, like a duck population, a dolphin population, a whale population. We are still not human beings under the United Nations. And most countries have now, the ones that were resisting in the end was Australia, Canada, Mexico, and the United States. The only country that's not acknowledging that we're people is the United States, because they're very concerned about the World Court. Because once we become a people, indigenous people, then we have all the rights of any other people struggle for self-determination, which means every contract, agreement, arrangement, and treaty the United States signed with the original peoples of this territory can be upheld in the World Court. And now we have a president who no longer recognizes the World Court. And even going back to Reagan, where he totally did not recognize his jurisdiction. So really, as long as we're still a population, we got a dog has more rights than we do. The United Nations does not recognize indigenous people as people. We're a population. When they say, and that's a really serious issue that is yet to be resolved. It hasn't been addressed, not even by the National Council of American Indians. No one's addressing it and taking it on. I think the only group that really has been consistently making this an issue has been the International Treaty Conference. Council, I mean.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.
So there we go. So that needs to obviously be
and it's
changed.
I mean, to me, that is like yet another reason, like, why Indigenous, it's on us, you know, to go and basically, you only have whatever rights you take for yourself, you know? So as far as our land being returned, I think that's why I'm, you know, drawn towards like getting the mission grounds back in the hands of Native people. Is that's some of the only land that hasn't changed hands thousands and thousands of times since it was stolen. So this is like a direct example where we can say, here is a piece of our history that we have the ability to take. We have the ability to take it back for ourselves. And I don't think that the United Nations or the United States government or any kind of state government is going to help us or want to help us with that. And it's on us, you know, it's on the Indigenous people to go out and take what is theirs.
I am down to just move in and not leave. And I think that we should all be in that mindset to, hey, we're not asking anymore. These are our lands, the only lands that are not covered in concrete, and they are tribal lands, and we should all just move in. But I'm a radical, I have been told. So but that could be on the agenda, who knows? You know, if that's the case, then
I think the more that these issues are exposed, that is going to be the consensus of more and more Indigenous people, is that, you know, we're here on our land. So what are we waiting for? That type of attitude.
When the first day we were driving out to Santa Cruz, I was on the phone with Wesley Elliott, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, because he was like, let's just go in and take them all. And I was like, whoa. But that is, hey, that could happen.
Yeah, I think he just maybe along the same trajectory for longer.
Go ahead.
Can I ask? I think that taking the land back is the only proper thing to do. But I think that in order to make it stick is a coalition. Has there been any kind of, in other words, it can't just be the native people, the original caretakers of that land, just walking in. It's got to be done with a whole lot of backing, I would say. And so my question is, has there been any kind of effort or thought given to developing the kind of coalition that is probably necessary to not just take the land, but then to hold it?
I think that's what Mark Day was talking about, us joining together, being united on this effort, and forming a coalition to do exactly that.
Okay,
there are lots of coalitions of Indian people throughout the state, not any specifically geared towards this, like, you know, geared towards reclaiming land. And I mentioned this, I know that the UCs are doing a critical mission studies project. They're funding several projects for the critical mission studies. And I brought this up to the board there, the board of directors,
It was our advisory board.
Advisory board there, you know, about forming some sort of, you know, Indian coalition across the state, and specifically targeted at, you know, their grievances with the mission system as it stands today. You know, whether that means to them just getting more representation in the way that the history is told, or whether that means taking full control of the mission and all of its functions, or whether that means tearing it down and rebuilding housing for their people. Doesn't matter. What matters is that natives need, you know, or we need to help each other, you know, achieve our own goals, you know. And I think that is something that needs to happen. There needs to be a coalition of Indigenous groups throughout California, well, to start with California, that are, you know, taking a look and saying, what are our grievances with the missions right now, today?
I have a quick question related to that. And just kind of going back to how you both had mentioned maybe some questions you had about kind of like the Anglicanized members of your tribal councils. And I'm just curious about what their stance is and if that has any sort of a dampening effect on those goals of yours, because I'm really in solidarity.
Well, I fully believe that my tribal leader is understands everything that I think is wrong or not happening within our tribe. We have 7 out of 9 tribal senate people that are Christian or Catholic, and that was my issue. Why are they making decisions for me? Because no matter how you slice it, they are colonized because they have embraced this colonized system. So I don't think that they should be making decisions for me. So if it came down to it, then I would have to probably withdraw my tribal citizenship and move forward. That's how strongly I feel about it. But I do believe that my tribal leader understands me, and he's part of that system where you have to go through, the process, and the process doesn't work for us. Frankly, it doesn't work for us. So there's got to be some pull. But if that came down to it, I don't think it's fair that I would have to withdraw my tribal citizenship. But that's probably what would have to happen. Unless they kick me out, I don't know. But that's I don't see my tribe moving forward with me on this at all. No.
I think built in with that, the indoctrination that happens in religion is this kind of knee-jerk reaction to get super defensive, and it makes it so impossible to have a dialogue. And I think it's so important for you to gain those kind of protections, the separation of religion, especially Catholicism in particular.
And I have a very strong willed, and I'm sure I do come off sometimes like I think I know everything, but this is something that's true. It's real, and it's not because I don't like them. It's because I do love them, and they're my people, and I want to see all of us in a position where we are Indigenous and not in that frame of mind of a colonized mind state where they just don't get it. You can't be both. There's no understanding. There's no balance. So, but I'm not trying to win a popularity contest with my tribe, but it's come down to the fact that, Caroline's what do you call it? I am very strong-willed, and what I'm saying is I'm not saying anything that's not true. So, and I'm not afraid to say it anymore or try not to offend people because I'm offended. So it could very well come down to that, which it shouldn't have to, but it very well may be, because I do strongly believe that we need to move forward with returning those mission lands, and it's directly ours, and the state of California making money off of them, and the church it's unnerving to think that that they can't see what they're doing. And in Mission 17 in San Fernando, there's not one mention of our tribe at all. There's no mention of us ever existing, because if they did have to acknowledge, in writing that we were there, people are going to start asking what happened to us. Kagen went on a field trip to the mission. My daughter went on a field trip to Santa Barbara mission, and it was very unnerving when we were standing there with the docent, and they're saying, this is a mass, or there's 2,500 people buried here because they were afraid to be buried outside the mission walls, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wait a minute, this is a mass burial. Okay, that's what happened. Yeah. Why? Because they were considered second-class citizens. And it's time that people need to speak up and not be afraid to tell the truth. We're so used to living this lie that it's become the norm, and it's not healthy.
No Indian has ever been afraid to be buried outside of someone's
walls.
Yeah,
Native people are not afraid to be buried outside the walls. So there was a point where, with the 17 protocol agreement that I spoke of earlier, where the Archdiocese made an offering to give us some land at their cemeteries. We still have to pay for burials, but they were going to let us use this part of the land, which is our land to begin with. But I went crazy thinking, there's no way that I am going to allow my ancestor to be repatriated into the ground and blessed by a bishop. There's no way that that's going to happen. And I'll go to the death with that one. There's no way that I am going to allow that if they come from my ancestral villages. So, yeah, if we ever get them back, we are in the process having remains returned to us now, but they won't be put in a Catholic cemetery. They shouldn't be in a cemetery. You know, there's one original cemetery in the area in San Francisco Canyon where they say there's 125 burials. My grandparents are buried, great-parents are buried there, along with other family members that died in the flood in San Francisco Canyon. But it's an original cemetery. All the cemeteries in our area are original cemeteries for the people. And just became bigger cemeteries. Of course, our ancestors are not marked and they're probably not even there anymore. Yeah, that's being putting a Native person or having a person pray over the ancestors in any sense of the word who is of that colonial religion is an insult, I believe. And I don't care if they believe that they can be both. That's just not possible. It's not okay to place Catholic prayers on our ancestors.
Yeah,
or Christian prayers for that matter.
And like Christina just mentioned about the knee-jerk reaction in Caroline, how I forget if it was Kagen or yourself mentioned that you went to that coffee shop and that priest came up and said it's witchcraft and there's human sacrifice. And
yeah, that was at the mission.
And the thing that has to be said is that the Catholics that came in from Spain commented on the brutality of the sacrifice, of human sacrifices. But if you went to London or you went to Seville or you went to Paris, what you saw is you had the Huguenots who were just slaughtered, and you saw witch burnings. Nobody talks about how many hundreds of thousands of women were murdered throughout European history to the torch of Christianity claiming to be witch.
I mean, I don't get what people don't understand about this. I mean, it is a conquer and destroy society, this Christianity. I say American Christian, you know, but it is taken its toll on us as Indigenous people. One nation under God. They don't say all nations under God because we're not, you know, we're not under that rule. And whoever my God is or whatever, it's not that Christian person or being or supernatural, whatever. But yeah, there's got to be some clarity within Indigenous communities about who we, what we do as far as ceremonies. And I was at a ceremony where there was a person who was of the Catholic faith and holding ceremony, and it didn't disrupt my relationship with the ancestors, but it's unnerving to think that they're laying down Catholic prayers on our ancestors. So, and once we put down tobacco, it opens up a whole realm of spirituality, and that spirit does not need to be anywhere near our ancestors. It's the same spirit that wants to remove them from the ground at Cal State Long Beach, for sure. So
I have a question and a comment.
Yes, sir.
That, you know, it's a consequence when you lose the war and people are subjugated and bad things happen to them. So if you're going to win it back, you've got a bigger coalition to fight. And so to try to redo everything, you've got an impossible deal. So the idea of starting, do
Where
little
do you
things
suggest
first.
we should start? I mean, coming from your perspective, where do you think we should start? Who do we need to bring into our coalition as far as support?
You fight the war over again and try to burn down the churches and destroy deals. It's not going to get you anywhere.
I'm not trying to
you know,
we're not trying
forming the coalition, peaceful means, and getting people on your side and getting changes. But to do it, I mean, you're cultural warriors now. I mean, you were pacifist until you went on that tour, and now you're a fighter. And you're going to, you know, you're just really a radical, whatever. Eventually, you're going to be labeled a terrorist because you're trying to change everything in a hurry. It's going to take forever.
I know that. If it happens in my lifetime, I will be pleased. But I see that my sons will probably take on the rest of that fight. But I do think that there are a lot of people that are on our side of the fence, you know. And I'm not trying to burn anybody down. I'm not trying to be violent. I just want to make people understand, or help people understand that this is what needs to happen.
Yeah. And I think an important part of like getting people to understand like where we're coming from. We don't want to like take these missions over and, you know, get rid of all the Christians and, you know, abolish Christianity and all of that. We're only seeking the means to continue survival, like as a people, as a distinct people. So, I mean, part of our culture, a huge part of our culture is connection to the land. And without a connection to the land, you know, that's where our language comes from. That's where our traditional medicine comes from. That's where our spirituality, it all comes from a connection to the land where our ancestors, you know, lived and died. And that's all we're seeking. It's just that the means to continue as a distinct people.
And not be erased as a
we're not seeking
as a population
conquest. We're seeking, you know,
the right to
the right to exist as ourselves.
Yeah, you want to take back the land, but that's a hard job to do for
and
people.
we do
that
everything in a
control
good way. I mean,
okay, you say you want to take back the land, but it's going to be a hard job to take it back from the people that control it. And you're going to need a strong coalition, and you got to have warriors to do it, not just words. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Well, you know, like I said earlier at the start of this chat, you know, my new mantra for humanism is no longer good without God. It's we are humanists and we're here to help. And in terms of coalition and being there to support our indigenous and native brothers and sisters, we are humanists and we are here to help.
Thank you. I believe that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we really do. I mean, any help that we can get from
any
outside groups
any
is always
person-
appreciated.
Yeah, who's organized and it's because I'm all over the place. I mean, I know what I need to do, but organizers, both from the indigenous community and those in solidarity, to come together and help us.
Yeah.
And stand with us for what's right.
And I think, I mean, your organization, as I understand it, is, you know, organized around, you know, kind of like conscious atheism, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, you know, like you were saying, good without a God. It's like, we don't need these religious structures to tell us how to be a good person, because that is innate within us, you know? And I think that, you know, already what you guys are doing, you know, is just breaking down kind of some of the mythos and the, you know, the magical thinking of a lot of people. I think that is in itself good work and is contributing to, you know, our goals, because, you know, once people are able to function without these systems, they'll realize, you know, a lot of things they don't know that they don't know.
I firmly believe that we cannot leave this place until you are happy in your life. Let's live our lives without this madness and this control of religion. And there's nobody who can live up to that persona of it's ridiculous.
In San Diego, we got a 30-foot in Balboa Park peace symbol where people get together and decorate it with flowers. So everybody's for peace, but how you get it?
That's right. You know, I think that we all are just want to solve world peace, and that is to get out of that line. You have to be not a part of that line.
That's one of the things that is frustrating in, you know, organizing people together is, I feel like I hate to put it in like, you know, binary terms, but on the other side, on the religious side, they have ultimate solidarity with each other, because an attack on one of them is an attack on their entire belief system. And it is really, you know, efficient in keeping its control, you know, because people, like we said, even in our own tribe, they feel personally slighted when we try to expose some of this history and some of the ongoing consequences. And I think that like I was saying, they have ultimate solidarity with each other on the other side, and I think that is something that is severely lacking on the side of people who are seeking a world free from religious control. I think that maybe our love for liberty, or our love for our love for liberty is kind of, not only is it their problem, but it might be a little bit of our what is preventing coalitions from existing, basically, is that we're ready to point out the inadequacies in each other's movements rather than gathering around like an idea or a common cause, right? So I think that is one hurdle that needs to be addressed in forming like these type of coalitions, these solidarity movements. Is it's crucial to put aside like the small differences and realize the goals are the same in the end. Again, I appreciate you guys giving us this opportunity to reach people from your community.
Absolutely. Nancy has a question, and I think we'll start wrapping up because we've been on for 3 hours. And because we've been on for 3 hours and we're not running out of things to talk about, let's just...
That's a good thing, right?
In February, we're going to come back together, and maybe even before then, we'll come back together and continue this chat. Nancy.
Hi, I'm a bit new using a smartphone, and so, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, I don't know how to do the sound and the vision at the same time at the moment, and I did want to try to share this. I'm very sorry I missed the earlier time, and I will try to see it on YouTube, but I had joined you all, well, the two of you, when you were up in Northern California. We walked into San Rafael together. And I gave you a purple water spritzer.
Yes,
we remember you, of course.
I remember, and you know what? I've been thinking about you because I was trying to find out who you were, and what you. Yeah.
How
you were there
sweet. Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember.
That was very moving, and I'd also been part of the walks here with the Ohlone peoples. It was actually 5 years where we walked to the sites of the show mounds of the Ohlone people over 5 years. And I think it's a really beautiful way. And I think part of it came up because there was an attempt to get more visibility of the fact that there were Ohlone people here. And that was a very effective and gentle way that it moved over time, just sort of consistently doing more things relating to it. More and more people who never would have known they could have been moved, and they're for the Ohlone people, and they're things they want to try to do, and also seeing the ideas of decolonization, that are coming up, both with African American people and Native peoples. I just think that there are a lot of people who, even though they may have been raised Catholic, I think that they are honest, and everybody acknowledges it's been a lie. History is a lie. So I really do share your opinion, Kagen, that this history, that talking about it from the standpoint of the history and of the making things right, that this makes such good sense to share it, I guess, more openly with the general public, I guess you could say, to appeal to everyone. And I'll bet you it could be as much as 70%. I haven't been in a Catholic church in years, but I'll bet the people there, for the most part, they are honest people. They want to think of themselves as kind people, and I don't think that they would stick with the they would be honest about what the history was, and to be invited to do something to step away from some of that history and some of that murder and of generations of that suppression. I think a lot of people would welcome that in these times. So I would like to work with you, and so I just wanted to share those ideas.
I'm so
thank you for
happy you're
doing
here.
this.
I'm
I
really
am
happy
too.
that you're
Yeah.
here. Nancy, I do believe that the hearts of the individual Catholics are sincere, and it's not, everybody has a right to believe whatever they want to believe, and that should have been the same way when they came here. So I have no position to tell anybody what to believe, but as far as Indigenous people and the Catholic religion, there's a huge imbalance, and
right.
So it's a huge misunderstanding of what our ancestors were doing and what is going on now is what I mean. But
exactly.
in no way do I want to change anybody's belief system, and I think everybody should feel that way.
And it is.
But I'm so happy you're
complicit.
here.
It's complicit with the whole climate dangers too. I mean, this whole attitude of the domination towards nature and towards the whole earth. It really, it's time for it to be lifted. And I think there can be a gentle way to do it because there's a lot of people waiting to be invited to be involved.
Well, climate change is definitely can be directly related to the genocide of the indigenous people.
We were talking a little bit about the fires that are going on here in California right now at the start of the talk, and I mentioned, a huge part of the problem is that we have, lost all of our connection to the cycles of the place that we live. This land is, it's always burned itself clean every year. This is what is supposed to happen. And the invasive species, all of the, like you were saying, just the general attitude of this domination of nature is,
damming up.
It's one and the
water.
same problem that we face as indigenous people.
Same problem. Right.
Because we are viewed as one of those forces of nature. Essentially, like Carlos was saying earlier, we're not viewed as people. We're viewed as a population, like a wildlife population. And as wrong as that is, when we're talking about identifying people and their rights, it is in a sense true to us that we are no different from any of the other species that are native to this area, and the only difference is that we are conscious and of our responsibility to the land, and I think reinstating some of those indigenous land practices is also a really important aspect of this whole movement of, as long as we're talking about reclaiming land, we need to be starting to talk about,
how to manage it.
Our responsibility to that land.
Val Lopez up in Amamutsin homeland, that's what he's doing with his people, his land management. And from what I understand, he actually invited me to go out there and for a couple of weeks and engage with them on that. And I think I may do that, but that's what he's doing, is working the land with his people. So, and Karina's doing that at Scorte.
Indigenous people all over the state are, we've always maintained our connections in whatever way that we can.
We are the land. The earth is our mother. We are the earth. So for people not to be able to engage or be a part of that value system of managing and being a part of the earth, that's where the imbalance comes for Indigenous people, and why we are that's 90% of the world's failures are based on colonization.
I had a thought the other day. It's custom when we go and harvest plant medicine from wild areas to leave tobacco. And a friend of mine asked me, why do you leave tobacco? And I was like, well, it's an offering, it's an offering to the plant saying, we don't take anything without giving back. And he's like, yeah, but why tobacco? And I kept thinking about that. And I know there's several myths in different cultures of why tobacco is used. But I kept thinking, I was like, well, tobacco's rare. Tobacco's rare. So you leave a rare substance when you take from the environment, right? That way, you're not taking all the time. You know, you don't just take and take and take.
You don't just take just to take. There's been this big discussion on white sage harvesting or farming. I read it on yesterday about that, and you know, it's not just you just don't go pick medicine. There's a process, and it's a respectful ceremony to take something from the land, and that's what I give back. So I'm so glad you came on.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear from you. And you're still, yeah, Mauna Kea, right? She was with Mauna Kea. So, thank you.
I'm in the East Bay.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in purple.
Yeah, the purple.
Yes, yes.
That's it.
Yeah, that was the second mission we had been to, and that was just the way that all came about the ancestors being under the parking lot, and you know, that was our first encounter with.
That was a particularly hard one.
Yeah.
Just we had not been hardened by the journey yet.
Yeah, our feet were still blistered at that time.
Yeah, and our, you know, our spirits were as soft as our feet, I guess.
Yeah.
At that time.
Well, I'm glad you came on. Thank you. And I hope you keep on following us because we need you and your solidarity with this, because it's going to move forward. We're going to move forward right now. So this is what's up next.
Well,
and I honestly do believe that we will, that the California tribes will join us in this effort, because why wouldn't they have their own cultural center? This should be cultural centers for our children and for their children, and truth building at those centers. So, I mean, it's hard to take when you realize, you know what, everything I learned in history is a lie. You know, and people wonder why we don't respect authority, or you know, I have a hard time with believing. It's just it's madness to think that we're still not honest with our children and this society as a whole. So you guys are awesome.
It's almost like if Poland kept Auschwitz open as a Nazi information center. Really?
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
And people
and employed neo-Nazis
and had Hitler statues.
Yeah,
and had Hitler statues. You know, I think that somebody was talking this morning about replacing a native statue with the one that they removed at the park, which we haven't got full confirmation that they're not going to try and put that statue back up. It will come back down if they do, but I think that we should have something cultural for our youth, maybe revolving murals. You know, every other month they get to have their own cultural artwork up and have a place for them to come and play their music or write their poems or sing or whatever that has to do with who they are. And I think we're really not people that put up monuments and statues and so forth, but I think that being able to have our youth, because our youth are on it. These kids that I work with, they're just, they know what's going on, and they are warriors. And I'm proud to walk with them. Fulchly, he's one of my just amazing kids that I know that has a group of kids that come around, and they just are, they understand way more at their age than I did at their age. That's for sure.
Which is a good sign.
Yeah. But his parents are on it too, so.
Yeah.
They used to have Acorn Day here in San Diego at San Felipe Park, and they make acorn pie and all that stuff. The Indians
They
would
should do that
display.
again.
Yeah.
They should do that again.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, cultural events like that for the public. I mean, I work at the Chumash Museum for my day job, and the public is genuinely interested in Indigenous lifeways, you know, whether that is from a purely superficial standpoint, or whether they're like really interested in the history and correcting some of that history. I think that, you know, the more exposure that these things have to the general public is just, it can only do good for the Indigenous community. To have more people aware that, number one, we're still here. You know, we're still here
We are still
in
here.
our homelands, and we're doing what we've always done.
You know, the other day, just a couple of days ago, this shows you how much I pay attention to this particular day that is an infamous day, really. I just realized a couple days ago that in a week, we have a recognition of someone who doesn't deserve necessarily to be recognized. Talking about dates, about Columbus Day.
Columbus.
Oh, Columbus Day. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't celebrate that.
You know,
well, in Los Angeles County, we have instituted Indigenous Peoples Day to replace it, which is, I mean,
it's abolished.
The general goal with all of this monument issues, you know, the statues. Nobody that I know in the Indigenous community wants to erase history. As a matter of fact, that's what we're actively fighting against, is the erasure of history. You know, it's important to tell a complete, true history when we're talking about, you know, where we come from.
So it doesn't happen again.
Right.
So
it doesn't keep happening.
Yeah, you know, I told you guys earlier that they took down that statue at Mission 17, or across the street from Mission 17. It's a public area where the statue was, and that was the reason we wanted it down. And but it's not because they did it because of why we wanted them to. They did it to protect the statue.
Yeah.
They did it to protect the statue.
Again.
So it's an inanimate object, but what it represents is a history that I don't want to look at it every day. But like I said, revolving murals or something of that nature for our youth would be ideal. And that's our space now. That is our space. And it's a big space. So, okay. Nancy, I'm so glad you came on. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you for walking with us too.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And
So I think we're gonna call it a day, but we're, you know, in February, whatever you need to make that happen, let me know and I will be there. I have many name suggestions for you, Carlos being one of them. Martin Rizzo would be another with his history, and Teheshna, Karina Gould, Steve Newcomb on the doctrine, Stan Rodriguez, Jamie LeBreg. Whatever you need, I will be there to embarked day.
So I think today launches a brand new partnership between Indigenous and humans.
You know, we're used to talking to people in our own community. This is what we need to do, is talk to people outside of our community who and look at what the difference it makes for you as a person and for us to be able to share and have somebody who gets it and who's willing to stand with us too. Is Jim still on? Tell Jim I said thank you. We will take his advice and not just burn down things. And but I thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk. I know that you were on the toppling of the missions symposium that we had with the UCs, and that was for the Critical Mission Studies project, the grant. And I sit on that advisory board, and it's been an interesting time. So, but thank you, everybody.
Well, if you could,
I have some information that I'll be sending to you, and you can put it on the website.
Thank you. If you guys could unmute yourself and give a warm Kumeyaay region thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks,
Thank
you
you,
guys.
guys.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
Peace.
Pleasure to be here with y'all.